Hi, welcome back, guys. This is your friend. Caller, what if with another fiction? What if Deku mission as a teacher in American school? Now, before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. Dark raindrops pattered off the cracked concrete of the dank alleyway. The narrow pathway, between a strip club and a hot pot place, was littered with torn pieces of aluminum foil and crumpled up beer cans and wet newspapers. The night was engorged with a dense fog that forced the lone taxi cab driving past to blink its high beams on. It passed the mouth of the alleyway and blew a plastic bottle from its place by a trash can down into the alley. The bottle clattered and rolled over the cracks before bouncing into the shoulder of a figure laying face down at the precipice of a pothole that filled up with water. The thick air wafted over the rusted dumpster seated next to the waterfall pouring out of the gutters into the drowned pothole. A pothole was obscured by a head of blonde hair belonging to a husky figure in a hero costume. The figure was face down with his limbs limp on either side. The rain traced over his broad shoulders and soaked his uniform, which was now clung to him like a tight noose, imprisoning him to this final resting spot. From the pale skin tinted in ice blue, he had been in that puddle for quite a while. A soft breeze brushed over the strands of hair sticking upward. The squelch of boots slapped into another puddle just feet away in the center of the alley. The boots squeaked over the damp concrete and stopped just inches away from the crown of his head. A brief tisk, and then the man crouched down. Keigo narrowed his yellow eyes and tilted his head like a confused puppy. He reached his hand out and poked the man's cheek. Sure enough, the frigid skin singed his fingertip. He retracted his hand, stared at his hand. He clenched it and sighed before pulling out his notepad. He pulled out his pencil and scribbled onto the page. Then, he tapped on his ear and clicked on the earbud that chirped and illuminated with a yellow ring in the center. "Hey, Drake," he said. "When you got a sec, fly on down to the corner of Hoth and Mandalore. This is a weird one. It's about to get weirder." Hawks sprung to his feet. Priding himself on keeping a cool head, he would later chastise himself for his beet-red face and the whining gasp that escaped his lips. It was a thin, even frail face that he had not seen in years. The spiked black hair along with the dark stitched stretched over his scarred body obscured by the loose-fitting black jacket around his tattered white t-shirt. His muscles long gone, the man stumbled and hugged his body while shaking under the torrential downpour. He stopped underneath a copper streetlight that cast an auburn pallor over him. "No," Hawk said. "I thought you were dead? In prison?" he asked in a shaking tone. "You stopped visiting me years ago. So how would you know?" Hawks stepped forward. A look of pity flashed across his face as he paused just shy of the street light. He placed a hand in his jacket pocket and cast a glance down at his feet. "Talia," Hawk said, "I don't know how you broke out, but you need to go back. For your own sake." "Are you going to arrest me?" Talia Todoroki said with a mirthless chuckle. "No, I'm asking you, as a friend," Hawk said. "You need to leave. My partner is going to be here any second." "I don't have much time left, Keigo," Talia said. "This is my last chance at redemption, and I'm not going to waste it." Hawks glanced at the dead body drowned in the puddle. His wings bristled, and one of the scarlet feathers latched off his frame and hovered right by his shoulder. He stared at nape of Talia's neck and prepared to launch his feather and slice the taut skin. In a way, he thought of it as a mercy killing. Toya coughed and hacked his lungs while the rest of his body shook under his cold clothes. He doubled over and clutched his midsection before swallowing and wiping his eyes that were polluted by the droplets falling off his hair. "Don't worry," Toya said. "I was already weak even before this happened. I only get an hour of yard time, and it's solitary." "Talia," Hawks shook his head. "Please tell me you didn't." "I had nothing to do with this," Talia gestured at the dead hero. "But I know why it happened, and I need you to help me find out who is doing this. If we don't, the entire world is at stake." I don't have time for games, Talia. You have 5 seconds to tell me what happened, or I'll. You'll what? Talia asked. Kill me. Throw me back in prison? Keigo, you should know me better by now. I have nothing left. No father. No brother. No family. I have no legacy left behind. Keigo, when I die, I'll evaporate into nothingness. Like these raindrops back up to those clouds above us. And then into nothingness. I had no reason to break out. Not until something happened to me. And Keigo, you're my last hope to solve this. And to give me another chance. At living. A terse silence entangled the two. Hawks stared deep into Talia's eyes. For once, there was no playfulness or designs. It was a genuine appearance of concern. What is it? Keigo asked. What happened to Mirio? Toya looked over at the puddle. The former hero known as Lemillion lay stiff and lifeless in the alleyway. Talia sighed and lifted up his palm before him. The same thing that happened to me, he said. Toya stopped. Only the sound of the pouring rain interrupted the pause as Talia's eyes started to water. If Keigo did not know better, he would think it was rain. However, he saw the tears drip over his sunken cheeks and mixed with the drops that splattered on the ground and drenched his torn black boots. I lost my quirk, Talia said. And very soon. Unless you can help me. The whole world will be quirkless. Forever. Come one, come all. Yes, welcome to my second very siak for BNHA. I am so grateful to get started up again, as I need to write more in order to become better. You may be familiar with Your Hero Academia, An American Life. Yes, that was me. And this will be a sequel. However, you won't need to have knowledge of that story. I will fill you in as we go along. That said, I pride myself on having finished that story. Now, I get to do it again. I must admit I am doing this as I have just moved and have not written as much as I would have liked. So now, I am going to have you cheer me on and force myself to write more than ever. My schedule outside of work is relatively open right now. I promise to be prompt and timely with my updates. I can't promise the 5,000-page chapters that my previous siak made, but I'm hoping to grow our little community and have some fun while doing it. Submissions are now open via PM or review. Preferably PM with the character's name in the subject. I really don't have much preference in what I would like to see. I don't have any real agenda on this one other than having fun. To the people whose characters I wrote for my first siak, the students of Uses the name of the school, thank you so much for your support. You are welcome to submit as well. And don't worry, plenty of cameos of your characters will follow. We also have a Discord you can enter. I hope this link works. Otherwise, let me know. Also, don't be afraid to spread about this via Reddit or whatever. I also wonder if I should cross-post with AO3. Let me know if you think this is a good idea. Time to play again. Link to MHA, an American Life Discord. Code R3 Arrow. Siak form. Name. Age probably 15-17 as far as age range. Gender. Nationality. Personality. This is the big one. Don't just list adjectives. Give me a feeling of what this character is like as a human being. Appearance. Body build. Eye color. Hairstyle and color. How do they wear their school uniform? Typical dress clothes. Formal wear. Swimwear. Hero costume. No need to be a fashion designer. Just a basic rundown. Accessories on uniform or just day-to-day. Quirk name and use. Backstory. History. Family. Friends. What do they do at this school? Extra activities. Other stuff. Likes at least 5. Dislikes fears at least 5. Strengths, either quirk strengths or regular strengths. Weaknesses same as above. Include equal or more weaknesses than strengths, please. How do they feel about villains? Habit hobbies. Reaction to killing someone if it happens. What story arc do you envision this character having, if any? Romance you up for it? If so, with whom? The destruction of the pawn shop was just like how he remembered. Fire, gray smog, gasoline burning at the tips of his nostrils. The smoke fluttered over the burnt embers of the parched plywood. In the corner, a downed power line snapped off sparks that streamed over a puddle of sewage water leaking from a pipe. The liquid splashed into a reservoir that swam over the broken cobblestone and turned dirt. The water snuck over the surface, drowning small pebbles that rolled with the current until colliding with the toe of a steel-toed boot. Wearing the boot was Bakugo, but a much different Bakugo. One much shorter and quite pudgy in stature. His costume burst at the seams as the small, old man strutted to the center of the battlefield. "Yes, I have done it," Danny DeVito shouted. "I have stopped you all from leaving this electronic prison. So you all can suck it, Class 1A. Before he could drone on, a giant boulder of a man landed on one knee right in front of him. Tan with shoulders the size of a semi-truck, he adjusted his green wig that poked over his normally bald head and quirked an eyebrow. "You have only stopped us temporarily," Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said to Bakugo. "However, you have not crushed our spirit, Shoto. Will you assist me in defeating the bastardly Bakugo?" "I already done told you, Bakugo." Kevin Hart in Shoto's costume marched up to Izuku's side. "You mess with my fam, you about to be messed up." "I stopped you once before, you dumb Isothot," Bakugo said. "I'm gonna do it again. And this time, I'm gonna roast you like a turkey." "You cannot defeat the power of friendship," Izuku said. "We will smite evil with our love and family, and also by beating the shit out of you." "Thou will not succeed," Bakugo said. "You're too weak and lame." "We don't have to stop you," Shoto said. "We got our students to handle that." "Where my boy Katsu at?" "Katsu! We gotta fry some Bakugo ass." I'm coming, Scarlett Johansson said with auburn eye contacts and a light brown wig. "All right, Shoto, are we gonna fry some Bakugo ass?" "Yeah, we frying Bakugo ass." "Then, let's fry some Bakugo ass." "You will be frying no ass," Bakugo said. "For I am here to wreak havoc on those who have rendered society worthless. Your school and class will be desecrated for all eternity. We live in a society. You will never stop us," Katsu said. "Because this is not your Hero Academia. This is my Hero Academia." Bakugo charged at Katsu. However, Shoto stretched out his arm. Water spouted out from his sleeve and drenched Bakugo. The old man screeched and fell to his knees. "I'm melting. What have you done?" he screamed. "Oh, what a world! What a world!" As he writhed into a dead corpse, Izuku loomed over him. "It's over, Bakugo. As my teacher, All Might, once said." "Eat this, bitch," Shoto shouted. Izuku raised an eyebrow at Shoto. "I was gonna say plus ultra, but that works, too." Cut to black. Then, thunderous applause. In the movie theater, Izuku Midoriya, the real one, ran a hand through his fluffed green hair and looked around at the crowd. They stood and roared in approval. The applause shook the room as Izuku slumped in his seat. The credits rolled as the lights phased in the room to give it a gray pallor that gleamed over the packed premiere. He saw all of his old classmates at UA shouting their approval. Denki flashed him a thumbs up. Kirishima wiped away a very manly tear. He craned his head towards the row in front of him. Aizawa, seated next to his mother, turned around. He nodded his approval towards the former pro hero. "Riveting, Izuku," Aizawa said. "Thanks, Aizawa-san," Izuku said. "It really was." "Man, I could go for some pizza right now," the Pope said to Deku. "Well, thank you for coming." Izuku shook the hand of the old man in a white robe and pointed hat. "Are you sure you don't want pizza?" "I heard Pizza Hut is great," the Pope said. "No, that's fine. I'm just happy my student is taking care of your city." "Oh, Lloyd is great," the Pope said. Before him, Rome was a cesspool of debauchery and destitution. And those were just the things my cardinals did. Izuku, not wanting to hear about the juicy gossip of the Vatican, bowed slightly. Thank you for your time. He twisted around and ran for the exit of the theater. His red shoes trounced over the red carpet as he was inundated with people trying to congratulate him over the movie. Smack! Izuku yelped from the hit on his shoulder. Yo, Profess! A loud and annoying voice shouted. You made it. Izuku stepped away from the brunette with shaggy hair and star-shaped sunglasses. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Abel. Abel Chevelle chortled. Yeah, I thought it was weird how I died 10 minutes in, though. And in a chimney, too. Also, why was Katsu a girl? She was hot, though. I don't know, Izuku rushed out. But I gotta go. Great seeing you. Izuku brushed past Abel and through the cacophony of light bulbs and paparazzi. He ran right through a shoot happening with a tall blonde with spikes in his arms, with a striking silver-haired woman in a long black dress. The photographers yelled their disapproval as Izuku's blurred figure obscured the couple. Oh, sorry, Izuku shouted. See ya, Austin. You too, Cinnies. Cinnies adjusted her black sunglasses and smacked her lips in annoyance. He ruined our shot again. Don't worry, he's probably off to another interview, Austin said. Well, we need to get back to the hotel anyway, Cinny said. I need you to get this dress off of me. Fast. Austin's face turned red as a tomato as the poses for another picture. Izuku rushed down the carpet. He shielded his eyes from the flashes that popped bright sun spots over his eyes. A kaleidoscopic of periwinkle and indigo exploded over his gaze as the roar of reporters rushed towards him like a tsunami crashing over a great mountain. Deku! Deku! A reporter shouted. How was the movie? It was unpredictable, Deku said. Deku! 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 A crowd of screeching fangirls and annoying superhero fans shouted. The other reporters clamored for more quotes, shoving microphones over the metal fence, separating the sidewalk from the red carpet. The flash of cameras popped a symphony of lilac and emerald spots over Izuku's eyes. He blinked and shielded his gaze from the assault while marching to the black limousine. Excuse me, Mr. Midoriya. Izuku slowed at hearing his last name. He scanned the rows of adoring fans, shouting for him on the side of the red carpet. They waved posters and action figures begging to be signed by him. In the crowd of shrieking admirers, a hand poked over the horizon of heads. Izuku walked over. The crowd's pitch elevated to that of a jet engine as Deku approached the velvet ropes holding them back. Who said that? Izuku said. My last name? It was me. Between two airhead fans, a teenage boy slipped into a gap he made with his lithe arms. A boy with soft, slightly unkempt silver hair with a sharp and stern face stared up at Izuku. What interested Izuku, however, were the odd electric blue eyes filled with white pupils in the center. Not only that, but a strange, almost unnoticeable lilac glow seemed to emanate from the very tips of his ears. On the boy's angular shoulders, he donned a pinstripe black suit with a black bow tie as fancy as any of the celebrities at the movie premiere. I don't normally hear my real name at these, Izuku said with a small grin. What's your name? I'm Leon, the boy said in a soft voice. And I just wanted to ask you. The boy looked away with a sheepish purse of his lips. With the stature of a shy puppy, he blinked and gazed up at Izuku. I just wanted to know, what advice do you have for people like me? Izuku narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? You know, Leon said. People that are actually. Mr. Right? A voice shouted from down the red carpet. Mr. Right? Where are you? Izuku turned to find an old man in a tuxedo scanning the crowd. Then, he spun back towards the group. The boy was gone. In his stead were more screeching fans that took selfies at the speed of a lightning bolt. Izuku shook his head. Whatever strange feeling he had, He shrugged it off as large men in black shirts surrounded him and pushed back the zealous photographers. Security followed him and held the reporters back before Izuku made it to the car. He yanked open the door and threw himself inside. He gazed out at the bright lights pointed at him like cannons lobbing across a battlefield. However, before another flash could capture the disheveled man, a scarlet feather latched around the handle and slammed the door shut. The feather sailed back to the wings of its owner. The blonde-haired man rested his arms on the backrest of the velvet seats with a wine glass in hand. "Hawks," Izuku said. "I didn't think you'd make it." "I didn't," Hawks said. "I only arrived for you." Hawks tapped on the sliding plexiglass screen behind him. The driver lurched the car in gear and accelerated away from the paparazzi. Some fans cheered and chased after the limo, and Izuku spied a few fans in cheap, wrinkled cosplay that held out action figures for him to sign. One of them tripped and fell on the road, and the others disappeared when the limo turned onto the on-ramp of the highway. "You didn't miss much," Izuku said. "The movie was bad." "Hey, they cut my part out completely." Hawks took a swig of the red wine in his grasp. "And why'd they have Bakugo scream every line? He wasn't that loud in real life." "And Todoroki was still alive," Izuku said. "Which isn't at all what happened." "That's Hollywood for ya," Hawks chuckled. "But you got a pretty penny for it all at least." "I gave most of it to Yua and my mom," Izuku said. "I really don't need most of it." Hawks grabbed the volume knob for the radio. The speakers squawked to life with a lively traffic report read over the air. "And 405 under construction after 10 tonight. Leona with entertainment. The big premiere of My Hero Academia. An American Life occurred tonight with the entire cast and their real-life counterparts. Deku arrived with his former class from the Void Industries incident. All of them looking excellent and charming. Even the annoying ones." Arriving with Deku in the red carpet was Moxie Lee, who was just announced as the number 5 hero in America after only 6 months as an official pro hero. Also showing up was Martel Void, who just last week announced a major purchase of the largest support corporation in Japan. Meanwhile, the hero Paralyzer went viral after tripping over a camera cord and slicing the ankle of his fiancée from Iceland. "We're not sure if she is okay, but she was wearing the most stunning silver gown with diamond sequins dotting her plunging neckline." Hawks lowered the volume. He smiled and took another sip of the wine. "You did a good job with them," Hawks said as the limo bumped over a pothole on the freeway. "All graduated on time. Half of them on a list hero agencies. 2 already in the top 10 in America. Even Muteki got on the chart in Japan. But let's be real. Anyone could get on the Japanese hero chart right now." "You're not on it," Izuku said. "Because I've been busy," Hawks said. "If I really cared about that, then sure. I could go out and help old ladies cross the street to get on some list. Hell, I'd probably be number 1 at this point." "But you're not," Izuku said with a frown. He stared out the window at the blinking headlights, driving though the dark around him. "Okay, fine. I'm not. So what?" "So what?" Izuku stared at Hawks. "So you've been on this case for 3 years, and you haven't solved anything." "Oh, and you've been so busy cracking it yourself," Hawks said. "Oh, wait. You decided to hide in that school for the last few years as a teacher." "I wasn't hiding," Izuku said. "I took care of my students." "And now they're all grown up," Hawks shot back. "They don't need Mama Deku to push them out of the nest anymore." "What are you getting at, Keiko?" Izuku said. "'Cause I really don't want to argue tonight." "I don't either," Hawks sighed. "I'm sorry. But it's not easy to say I haven't gotten anywhere after all this time." Izuku leaned back. He nodded at the dejected man across from him. "It's okay. It wasn't my priority anyway." Hawks tilted his head in confusion. "You don't want to know who took All for One from Shigaraki? Find the technology they used for it." "I do. But..." if they don't plan on doing anything else with it. But they are, Izuku, Hawk said. I came here to tell you that I actually have made some headway. The game has changed very quickly. How so? The consequences of not finding this person so will be severe, Hawk said. End of the world shit. Like all for one winning end of the world. Worse, Hawk said. We're sleeping on top of Chernobyl. Naked. And it's about to blow. The limo slowed to a halt. Izuku looked outside. They were outside a small clearing across from the Black Ocean. A familiar sight. Hey, this is where Yusa's was, Izuku said. In the simulation. Hawks opened the door. He gestured for Izuku to follow him. The limo was parked on the curb opposite the clearing. Only the occasional car swam past under the tungsten streetlights. Izuku climbed out and walked with Hawks across the highway towards the grass meadow wafting in the ocean breeze. Yes, you're old school, Hawks said. It was never anything but this clearing. Which is crazy considering this is prime real estate. Right, Heroic Solutions bought this land. Gonna make a lot of money with that government contract. Really? Izuku kicked a rock over the tall emerald blades as they walked closer to the cliff's edge. I thought Martel would have gotten the contract. Void is still a bit on the government's bad side, Hawk said. That's the reason they're moving so much over to Japan. It's become a pretty competitive market for support manufacturing and research in the States with them out of the way. At the edge of the cliff, Izuku peered down at the gray ocean. The graphite sheen waved over the sparkling water that crashed into the dark cliff below. The hush of the waves lulled Izuku into a brief respite from reality. He could smell the salt of the sea, the crunch of the flying crickets floating past. Even his own breathing was shallow and shy as he took in the twinkling stars painted over the endless space above. I've been pretty lonely, Keigo, Izuku said. Since the kids graduated, this press tour for this movie has been my life. I hadn't even seen my old classmates in years. Not since I escaped from the digital universe. I was sort of hoping to be able to live a bit. See the world. Take care of my mom. Maybe even meet someone. Well, that part is easy, Keigo said. You've been on the Hero magazine's hottest bachelor list for 3 years now. Not like that, Izuku waved his hands. Just someone I can start something of my own with. Keigo nodded and crouched down. He sat on the edge and swung his legs over the precipice. You still got time. You're not even 30 yet. We all got time. But we need to fix this issue first. And I know I'll need your help. Izuku sighed. Okay? What is it? Perhaps I can help answer that. Izuku whipped around. His fists immediately balls together at the sound of the Lee hero's voice. His nostrils flared, and his body tensed up like a murderous Viking. In front of him was a tall man with spiked black hair, wearing a leather jacket and tight black jeans, with burns covering his face and stitches across them. He smiled at Izuku with his hands in his pockets. Howdy, Izuku, Dabai said. Izuku charged at the man. Without a moment's hesitation, he slammed his fist into the man's face. A crack emanated from his nose, and Dabai cried out while falling to the ground. Dabai covered his nose, which gushed with blood. Oh, Uwa, Dabai moaned. What'd you do that for? Dabai yelped when Izuku picked him up by his feet. He lifted up the burnt stick and threw him back into the ground. Again, and again. Hawks watched with an amused gaze as Izuku beat up Dabai. He was relentless with every smack and kick that he lashed onto the poor man. Seeing the now quirkless man stomping Dabai into dust was a welcome sight to behold. Wait, Izuku. Dabai stuttered. I have something too. Izuku lifted up Dabai. He turned towards the cliff and prepared to launch him over the edge. Dabai wriggled in his grasp. But Izuku was much stronger than the man just days out of prison. He stepped up to the edge of the cliff and prepared to launch him over. What are you doing? Hawks finally asked. I'm beating him up, Izuku shouted. What does it look like? I didn't bring him here for you to beat him up, Hawks said. Then why are you letting him? Dabai cried. To be honest, you deserve it, Hawks said. Izuku grunted. Then he heaved Dabai forward and flung him off the cliff. Dabai screamed and tumbled downward through the air. Hawks rolled his eyes and leaped off the edge. His wings fluttered as he sailed out of sight to catch Dabai before he plunged into the ocean. Izuku caught his breath, while the sounds of Dabai's screams echoed off the rocky cliff. His mind raced with a myriad of scenarios for why he was within his presence. He was out for revenge. Shoto did say that his family and even Katsu could be threatened. Was he trying to start a new organization of villains? For what purpose? Did he simply want to escape prison? If so, who else escaped? Nobody had ever been known to leave, at least not without some insider assistance. Who would be crazy enough to free someone as horrid as Tauya Todoroki? The screams crescendoed when Hawks rose into the air. He cradled Dabai in his arms with the man still screaming. He landed in front of Izuku and dumped him on the ground. His face drenched in blood and throbbing raw skin torn away by Izuku's fist. The lanky man scooted away and fell onto his back. Shut up, Izuku yelled. Stop screaming so much, you dumb manatee. Stop trying to beat me up. Dabai flailed his arms around to stop Izuku from approaching him. And did you just call me a manatee? Tauya, stop being a bitch and calm down, Hawks said. Besides, we need to explain to him what's happening. Did you break him out? Izuku shouted at Hawks. After all he did to us? No, he got out on his own, Hawks said. And the reason why is the problem. Dabai sat up and held out his palm. He placed it upright by his face and flexed his wrists a few times. He sighed and dropped his arm back to his side. I lost my quirk. Izuku took a step forward. His lips tightened in a puzzlement that erased his vitriol towards the pathetic-looking man. Dabai shunted his eyes to the grass underneath his legs and twirled a strand of grass along his spindly fingers. What do you mean lost? Izuku said. Like you misplaced your quirk or something? I don't know, Dabai said. One day, I had my quirk. I was connected to that quirk usage monitor they use in that prison. That's what tells security when you're using it. And then I woke up in the middle of the night a couple weeks ago. The locks on restraints were powered off. At first, I thought it was a glitch. But then I got out of them and tried to use my quirk. But there was this emptiness inside me. Like a flame had been extinguished. I was scared. But I also knew this was my chance. So, I waited until the next day. When we were allowed out for our hour of rec time, I saw my quirk monitor wasn't working either. So, I waited till everyone was out of sight. And I jumped right into the ocean. It almost killed me, but I swam as hard as I could. I was taken away by the current before any alarm could be made. And before I knew it, I washed up at some beach. Stole a car, found Hawks. And here I am. Izuku glanced at Hawks for some confirmation. Hawks struggled his hair and blew out a long breath. That's not everything, Hawks said. We've gotten reports from the syndicate of people losing their quirks. About one per week at this point. Whatever is happening, it's becoming more apparent by the day. Does anyone else know? Izuku asked. And why wasn't I told before? Well, the syndicate and the feds thought they could keep it on the down low for a bit. Hawks pulled out his phone and scrolled through it. But things changed yesterday. And it's only a matter of time before this gets out to the public. Hawks showed Izuku an image on his phone. Izuku examined it for a moment. Then he gasped. His blood drew cold and prickled up his body like a frigid chill freezing his body. His legs shook, and his heart stomped onto his chest when he saw the shocking headlines. Pro hero Lemillion found dead in alleyway. Drowned in apparent suicide. No, he won't fall for it. He'll never fall for it. Are you kidding? He was oblivious for 5 years in that fake world. But he knows we are in reality now. Yes, but this could be the distraction we need. Or the distraction we need for him. Yes, that's what I meant. Thanks for clarifying. You're welcome. That was sarcasm. Okay, so have we feed Keigo the info? Yes, Hawks is already aware. Yes, Izuku Midoriya will start teaching at that new school soon. And he will help us with our objective. The objective. He will help us, whether he wants to or not. And we will succeed. By any means necessary. Yes, by any means necessary. For a fair and just world. For a fair and just world. By any means necessary. The American Hero School Association building gleamed in the bright sunset that set over the Los Angeles skyline. The glass windows sparkled like a crystal chandelier that rose over the city with a central spire atop the circular skyscraper. Izuku held onto the rail in the glass elevator that zoomed up the tower. Outside, the Los Angeles downtown are blinked with scarlet lights illuminating the rooftops. A plane flew past and traced a cotton trail over the periwinkle sky of which stars began to escape into the early night. Next to him, Hawks hummed a song he heard through his headphones. He tapped his foot with some strong K-pop beat vibrating over his ears. Izuku felt his ears pop with the fast rise in altitude. His heart squeezed in his chest when he gazed down at the tie around his neck. It was similar to the one he wore to Mirio's funeral just a few days previous. While he had lost contact with him, the experience gained from him made Izuku feel like a family member of his was lost. He knew this would happen eventually in this line of work. But he shivered at the thought that it was happening so soon. A beep emanated from the speakers above. The door opened behind him. Instead of a reception area, the doors revealed a conference room right outside the elevator. A gigantic room with black walls and a Kakabalo table sat in the center. Only a few people sat around it, and Izuku scanned the room while Hawks pushed him into the meeting. "Howdy, everyone," Hawks said. "We've arrived." "Yeah, I see you've arrived." A blonde girl with red tips dyed on the ends rolled her eyes. "I could smell you from the elevator." Izuku blinked and squinted when he reached the leather chair at the end of the table. Opposite him was a familiar British girl wearing a black suit. Next to him was a grump kid with greasy black hair and lime green skin that pouted in a stiff wooden chair next to him. "Megan?" Izuku asked. "Anton? What are you two doing here?" "Well, we couldn't make it to the premiere, but we thought we'd visit anyway," Megan said. "Oh, really?" Izuku said. "Wow, I'm so flattered." "She's kidding," Anton grumbled. "We didn't want to see you again." Megan smacked Anton's shoulder. He gasped and rubbed the spot as Megan clapped her hands. What he meant was, "Well, we've seen you so much after the last few years. And, you really got to not see someone in order to miss them. Know what I mean?" "Not really." Megan groaned and pulled out a remote control. She pressed it and turned on the computer screen behind her. On the screen was a map of the United States with a single golden square around a specific place. "Well, we would love to exchange niceties, but we brought you here for a different purpose." "But why are you two here?" Izuku asked. "I thought this was a meeting for the school association." "We kicked them out for a few minutes," Hawk said. "The syndicate thought this was more important." Yes, the syndicate, Izuku thought to himself. The same secret organization that tracked down the Salton Sea Scrolls to stop all for 4 years ago. He figured Megan would continue working for them. However, he was amused that Anton, as annoyed by the prospect of working for a secret spy organization, was seated in the same pinstripe suit that Megan wore. No doubt Pathogen was laughing at him this whole time in his head. "So, Hawks told you a bit about our situation," Megan said. "People losing their quirks. Right now, the losses seem to be contained to criminals and homeless in Japan. so there hasn't been much word about it in the news. However, we've been monitoring when it happens, and we noticed a strange electrical impulse just moments before these people reported to lose their quirks. Megan pointed at the spot on the map. Detroit, Michigan. We can't point to exactly where, but it's within a 10-mile radius. The signal disappears too fast for us to be more accurate. I also found an inside man from Void Industries, Anton said. I got info from him that before being captured, Edith Void sold some of her quirk manipulation technology to an unknown buyer within this region. But I was able to get pathogen to I got to persuade the man to give me an address from the contract. Anton slid a piece of paper across the long table. Izuku grabbed it and read the bill of sale. Montserrat. Well, that's where Void's manufacturing lab was stationed, Megan said. But look at the delivery location. Izuku read the delivery slip part of the contract. International Island. Detroit, Michigan. Wait, International Island, Izuku said. Isn't that where Detroit Hero Prep is located? The lowest rated school in the United States, Megan said. Possibly the world. It's a real cesspool. I thought they shut down last year, Izuku asked. They were, Megan said. But considering the connections this place has to what we are investigating, we had an interest in keeping it open. So, we called in some help. At the side of the table, a scruffed middle-aged man with thin glasses and a dark ponytail waved at Izuku. He was an unassuming man, but a dignified one who sat upright in his chair. His eyes jumped over to Izuku with a soft shadow painted over the side of his face away from Izuku. In a sharp blue tailored suit with his hands clasped in front of his mouth. His glasses shined under the hot ivory lamp swinging above as he quirked an eyebrow. Good evening, Deku, he said in a low voice. I am Shijo, right? Izuku bit his lip, while his mind fumbled through the different names that popped into his head. The names sounded familiar. Then, Izuku snapped his fingers. Of Right Heroic Solutions, you're the owner. And president, Shijo said. And CEO. And, as of this morning, the head of the board of trustees for Detroit Hero Prep. Which basically makes me owner. Well, as much as one can own a public school. As far as the feds are concerned, Megan said. Shijo is J. Mr. Right. Megan scowled at Shijo. The man only twitched his lips into a numbing smirk as he bore his blue eyes at Izuku. Mr. Right, Megan spat out, is just an angel donor saving a failing school. But we contacted him because we need this school open. We have evidence that not only is this strange quirk erasing signal coming from this area, but a person who works at the school is possibly behind this. Or at the very least, Anton said. Someone there will know more about it. Sadly, the feds haven't been too friendly to outside agencies cleaning up their messes. Megan turned off the computer screen. Not since they dropped the ball on saving us, Professor. It made them look bad, so they balked when we asked to go to the school and investigate ourselves. So, Izuku said, you want me to go there? Yes, Megan said. Then, gave a quick nod to Shijo. Go there and teach. Izuku scoffed and looked over to Hawks. He shrugged and gave a mischievous smirk to him. Izuku turned back to the others and shook his head with a flushed stammer. What? Go there and teach? No. No. Megan, Anton. I was going to retire after I taught you all. I said that to the whole class. Hunter bought me a hot dog to celebrate. That's why we're telling you now, Megan said. You still have this summer to enjoy. But we feel you can figure this out for us, even without your quirk. Oh, so that's what this is about. Izuku stood up with a deep frown etched into his face. You think because I don't have a quirk anymore that I need some bone thrown my way to not feel useless? Is that right? Oh, stop it, Megan said. I'm tired of the whole pity party. Look, Professor, you taught us, and did an okay job for the last few years without a quirk. And guess what? We turned out fine for the most part. Wait, Izuku complained. Just okay? I thought I was great. Besides, as far as the public is concerned, Anton said, you're just retired. They don't know how much of your quirk power you maintain. I will ensure you are paid handsomely, Shijo said. And you will even get a matching 401k with dental coverage. I don't care about all that, Izuku said. I've done my job, and I just want to go home and enjoy my life. Oh, so teaching us wasn't enjoying your life? Anton asked. Izuku stopped. He thought back to the time he has with his class, teaching them back at UA. All of the triumphs and successes flowed over his eyes, and he sighed with his shoulders slumping. No, that's not what I meant, Izuku said. It was the pride of my life teaching you all. I just don't know if I'm up for it again. I'm fine going to the school for a few days, but to teach there as your spy. Professor, Anton said. Whatever is causing this, it will come for us soon. All of us. The whole world will lose their quirks. We need you for this. One more fight. Besides, Megan smiled. You already saved the universe. Saving the world won't be as big of a deal, right? Izuku nodded. He had a feeling that, as much as he pulled, he would not be able to squeeze his way out of this obligation. Not only that, but as he looked down at the All Might keychain in his pocket, he realized that his idol would do the same thing. With no quirk, he was going to rely on his brains and physical talents to solve this mystery. Not only that, but he would have to teach another class of misfit, likely hormonal students. He had considered this could be something he did in the future, but not so recently. However, as he smiled at his former students, he knew that his duty to protect their world and his own would always be there. And he would always rise to the occasion. Okay, Izuku said. I'll teach at this school. Megan and Anton cheered. Anton jumped from his seat and high-fived Megan. They hopped in place and shouted in celebration. Okay, you all seem happy, Izuku said. Oh, we actually didn't care if you taught or not, Megan said. But if you didn't accept, the school would have shut down. Huh? Why? It was a stipulation of mine, Shijo said with a small smirk. If you didn't teach at the school, I wouldn't fund the syndicate's little operation using you as a mole. Okay, but why? Izuku said. Shijo chuckled. I have a son named Leon, and I would like to have you teach him at your new school. News of Deku returning to teach more students spread like wildfire. For days, social media was inundated with reports of people sending in applications and resumes for jobs and spots for students into the newly revamped school. From Korea to Europe, and even in Detroit itself, fans of the world's #1 hero clamored to go to the same school as he would soon teach. Unlike last time, he would actually be celebrated as a teacher in the real world. With only a couple of months before the revamped school in Detroit began the school year, people started to become desperate in winning a spot at the new school. Since local students got first priority, only the best and the brightest could get into the school across the country and the world. Well, that, or they paid the exorbitant tuition costs. What do you mean my application wasn't merit-based? I have plenty of merit. A honey-sweet, soft voice whined into a phone. Backstage at a Broadway theater, an electrician pushed a cart of C-stands past the open oak door that led into a dressing room. Inside the room, walls coated in bright pink and lilac paint with a cacophony of colorful dresses and costumes littering the hardwood floor. The aroma of lavender wafted from the burning candles beside the lit vanity that reflected the image of the boy complaining over the phone. I said I have plenty of merit, he said while applying foundation onto his porcelain skin. Wouldn't you call 69,000 followers on TikTok merit? I worked for all those fans, you know? The owner of the phone could be described as an angel due to the accuracy of such a statement. The prettiest boy in all of New York City, which was saying much. with his clear alabaster sheen and prim black hair that flowed underneath the golden halo that levitated over his head huffed into the foam. Around his thin frame was an odd, immaculate golden glow that whirred and hummed from his frustration at the person on the phone. Behind him, a small secondary glow in the general shape of what could be described as wings shrunk down to a minuscule size behind his back, as he shrugged on a blue striped long-sleeve shirt. He struggled to put it on, his golden eyes straining to blink past the right collar that flung to his gymnast-like frame. "I thought you'd like my headshots." "What do you mean they weren't necessary?" Skylar Lanson said into the speaker. "Didn't Deku see them? Why wouldn't he want me in his class?" More garble. Skylar brushed more foundation onto his skin. He shook his head at the shine on his forehead. Grabbing a cloth, he dabbed at it until his face had less sheen. "I was almost nominated for a Kid's Choice Award, lady. I'm as merit-based as you're gonna get." "Grades. Why would you want to see my grades? Those aren't even that important. Didn't you see my resume? I was in the ensemble for cats. Twice." One last garble of words from the phone. Skylar stood up and paced around his room. He kicked around some clothes at the floor in search for something. He turned over a cushion from the leather sofa, but he could not find the object. Okay. How about I link you my Instagram? I got like double the followers on there as my." Knock knock. "Skylar," a stage manager said. "You're on in 60. "I can't find my cast," Skylar shouted. Then, more words from the phone. Skylar gasped and turned to the phone. "No, I wasn't talking to you." "Skylar, now." "Okay, fine," Skylar said. Then, he turned back to the phone. "So how much for the tuition?" 10,000. "Fine, we'll get that to you." "Am I in?" "Good, talk to you later." Skylar slammed the phone onto the sofa. He ran towards the stage manager, who grabbed his arm and pushed him towards the stage. They snaked past the crew and costumer tables towards the stage wings. "I can't find the cast," Skylar said. "It's your responsibility, Sky," she whispered in an angry tone. "Look, I'd lose my wings if they weren't attached to me," Skylar said. "How am I supposed to keep up with an arm cast?" The stage manager looked around. Then, seeing a crew member with a neck brace, she snapped her fingers to grab his attention. Hey, she whispered in a harsh tone. "What happened to you?" The crew member looked up from his wheelchair. "A lamp fell on me." "You were there, Cynthia. Give me your neck brace. Now." The crew member ripped off the Velcro of his neck brace. The sound echoed backstage as the crowd sat in the dark, waiting for the show to begin outside. "You're gonna take Mike's neck brace." "He doesn't need it," the stage manager said. "Right, Mike?" "Right," the crew member said. "As long as I don't turn my neck at all. Otherwise, I'll be permanently paralyzed." "You see? He's fine," she said. Then, she snatched the neck brace away from him and threw it around Skylar's throat. "Wait, I can't," Skylar said. "I can't go on with a neck brace. It's a revival of a musical. People are expecting changes," she said. She finished latching the brace around Skylar's neck and tightened it like a noose. "It's supposed to be an arm cast," Skylar rushed out through his teeth. "Okay, well, guess what? Today," the stage manager pointed at Skylar's halo. He grabbed it and shrunk it down to a small glowing ring. Then, he placed it in his pocket. "Evan Hansen has a broken neck." She smacked Skylar on the behind. He yelped and hopped forward to Bumble on the stage. The lights came on as the music started. The crowd applauded, and Skylar plastered on a brave face before strutting out onto the stage for all to see. Pop! Champagne flowed out of a bottle. It dribbled onto the carpet floor with a crowd cheering around the spilling alcohol. The loud after-party was a boisterous affair with the cast and crew dancing the night away. More photographers snapped pictures while fans took selfies and video of their favorite actors. except for one who was hidden away at a table behind a cardboard cutout of himself. It's just 10 grand, Mom, Skylar said to his mother. Rose, who hovered a few inches above Skylar to make herself taller than him, had her arms crossed in a menacing fashion. It's not the money, Sky, Rose said. Me and your dad can handle that. But you don't actually want to do this. Yes, I do, Skylar said. Deku is going to be there, and you know how popular I'd get being in his class? Plus, you always said to have something to fall back on, right? Oh, so being a pro hero is a fallback option now, Rose stated. Well, look, I can do both. All right? We opened in time for the awards. And you know I'm getting at least nominated. So, I finish the summer here. I go to that school. Make friends with Deku. Then I come back next summer for some limited run thing. And I do that till I graduate. And then I can devote my time to this. Okay? But what do you want to be, Skylar? Rose asked. Fine, you can be an actor. Or a social media guy. Or a influencers, Skylar said. They're called influencers, Mom. Or a pro hero, Rose said. But being a pro hero is an actual profession. Saving lives. Saving the city. That's what you'd learn. That's like you saying you want to go to medical school to be a brain surgeon on the side of being an influence. It's influencer, Skylar said. And it's good for everyone. Besides, it was already in the contract that I took the school year off from the show anyway. Though, I don't know if this one will last long. I mean, my followers can't come every night, right? As great as they are, he said before taking a swig of his non-alcoholic cider. Rose sighed and lowered herself to the floor. She grabbed her purse and flung the leather strap over her shoulder. I'm fine if you want a good education. But at some point, you'll have to figure out what you're here for. On Earth. And I can't do that for you, Sky. 'Cause your looks and your roles and your followers, those go away eventually. So you need to think hard about what you really want to do. Maybe not tomorrow, but at some point, you need to find it. Skylar took a swig of his drink and set it down with a final clink. Did you ever find it, Mom? Rose narrowed her eyes, her face tightening with a nonplussed glare shooting lasers at her son. She towed her bag and stepped around the cardboard cutout. Then she disappeared into the crowd. Skylar peeked around the cutout and examined the rap party dancing to the soundtrack of the musical. He saw his mother disappear into the crowd, and a twinge of guilt smacked at his nerves. She could not understand the pressure he was under keeping up with his appearances. Could she? Yo, Sky, one of his fellow thespians shouted from a minibar. We were gonna hit up Webster Hall in 30. You coming? Skylar smiled with a quick wink. I'll meet you there. On a blustery, late spring night in Hell's Kitchen, Skylar strolled down the street in his finest leather jacket and skinny jeans. The bright halo glowed from above his head with his wings now out in full force. They weren't wings with feathers, or even wings that could physically be touched by anyone else. Instead, there was a strange translucent golden force, shaped like wings that protruded from two holes sewn in the back of Skylar's jacket. Some restaurant attendees on the sidewalk stared and took photos while he hustled past. He knew his appearance grabbed attention and had no problems with receiving it. He even waved at one or two of them. The golden glow over his body illuminated his oath as he turned onto a less lit side street past the bars into the residential high-rises of the neighborhood. On the screen of his newest smartphone, he touched a button on the pink case and opened up some of the social media sites. Looking up his own name, he saw the glowing reviews pouring in from different outlets. He smiled as he scrolled through the praise. Even the Times thought his performance was the best of the season, though they weren't fans of the show itself. Skylar clicked off his phone as he neared a corner. In the dark reflection was his face illuminated by the halo over his head. His smile evaporated while he looked over his face. He smudged back some of the foundation still plastered on his cheek. Underneath, his skin less slick and smooth. Then, he saw the fringe of his hairline and saw a small black hair poking out of his dyed blonde. He grabbed the strand at the base and tugged it out. He grimaced and flicked the hair away. In the chilled evening, the wind brushed over him, with the occasional taxi cab brushing past on the pavement. There was an eerie calm that rested over the corner, and the boy leaned back on a light pole with the tungsten lights casting a copper pallor over him. Then, a crash. Skylar perked up. He twisted himself to peer down the street. Outside of a closed deli, a trio of thugs dressed in all black held baseball bats in front of the glass storefront. Smash! One of them swung the club and shattered the window. They rushed through the opening with a burlap sack to hold their ill-gotten gains. Skylar turned around. Nobody else was around the block. He flipped back to the broken glass gleaming under the dull street light. With a courageous swallow, Skylar snuck towards the front of the store. His Italian designer shoes toed between the glass shards until he stood right in front of the broken window. Inside, the robbers ran around the deli. The black shapes poured money into their sacks along with any food left out. The boy was left with a predicament as to whether he should do something. Should he stop the robbers or call the police? After all, none seemed to have any definable quirk, so likely the pro-heroes would not care. Just a bunch of crackheads looking for a quick fix. Instead, Skylar picked the possible worst option and unlocked his phone. He turned it to himself and pressed an app. When at the home screen, he pressed a button to record his thoughts over a live stream. "Hey, Skystars," Skylar whispered. "I'm outside of Anton's deli on 45th, and I think these guys are robbing the store." He turned the phone to record the robbers. However, the glow from Skylar's halo reflected off the cash register one of the men was trying to pry open with a crowbar. Seeing the golden gleam from the rusted chrome, he turned to the street and saw Skylar standing with his phone in hand. "Hey, you!" the robber shouted. He captured the attention of the other two robbers. "Blast him!" One of the men turned around with a shotgun pointed right at Skylar. He dropped his phone and dived for the side of the street. Bang! A deafening eruption rang out over the storefront. Instead of a harsh crash onto the ground, Skylar's wings glided him to a soft descent with his body rubbing onto the concrete. When he landed, Skylar flipped on his back and saw the three thieves rush to the window, one with a shotgun and the other with a pistol. Seeing no other option, Skylar grabbed his halo and enlarged the ring to the size of a circular riot shield. He flung the halo like a frisbee at the robbers. The halo whizzed at them, and the fell and dived out of the way. The halo banged into the wall inside the deli and bounced over the main room like a rock skipping over tranquil waters. Once past them, the robbers stood up and pointed their weapons back at Skylar. However, a metallic clink echoed over the block before spinning rings slowed to a halt in mid-air and trailed back to Skylar. Not seeing the rebound, the halo slammed into the shotgun robber's skull. He collapsed to the ground with his weapon clattering onto the sidewalk. Then, the halo whirred in the air and returned to its rightful spot atop Skylar's head. With no other means to fight, Skylar tried to pick himself up to run away. However, one of the men cocked his pistol and pointed it at his back. "Don't move, or I shoot, Twinklitos," the robber shouted. Skylar held his hands up in surrender while looking away from them down the empty street. He cried out and shut his eyes. "No, please don't shoot," Skylar screamed in a quite unmanly way. "I didn't mean to hit your friend. I just tripped and was on my way to a nightclub, and I know I shouldn't be going because I'm underage, but I was going to anyway, and I know I should have just listened to Mom. But I promise I won't call the cops on you and, I've only been famous for like a couple of months, and I haven't even gone to Coachella yet, so please just let me go." "That was a pretty good throw, by the way," a deep voice said. Skylar spun on his heels with his arms still up at the different voice. He gasped at the sight of the two robbers. They were strung up in a cocoon of webbing and hung upside down like the carcass of a cow. They swung around in an inane struggle with their weapons abandoned on the floor below them. The sounds of them shouting were obscured by the dense gray webs that covered their mouths. Only the robber Skylar hit remained unencumbered sitting on the floor. However, he was blocked from reaching his shotgun by the new figure standing at the ledge of the windowsill. He was a tall man about as muscular as any pro hero. Donning a dark green jacket with matching pants, the strong man loomed over Skylar with pairs of spider legs jutting out from his back. The man, black with short hair down to his skull, turned with the elegance of an assured detective solving another tough case. "Whoa," Skylar said. "You're that new pro hero, the spider guy." "I haven't really decided on a name yet," he said. "But you can call me Hunter." Hunter gazed down at the robber still seated on the ground. "What about you? You still want to fight?" The robber, with slightly glazed eyes that had a strange yellow spark that popped within his irises like fizzing champagne, shrugged. "Not really. I just kinda." "You just want to go home?" Skylar asked. "Yeah, I think I'll just go home." The robber got up and hopped off the deli windowsill onto the sidewalk. He bumbled past Skylar and trudged down the street. Hunter nodded and pointed at Skylar's halo. "Did that have something to do with that?" "Oh, it's part of my quirk," Skylar said. "My halo doesn't actually harm anyone directly, but it can harm a person's free will. Not so much that I can control them, but just heavily suggest." Hunter smirked. Then he blasted out a web that sailed just inches from Skylar's face. The boy squeaked as the web smacked into the feet of the retreating robber. He fell right at the street corner of the other block and toppled onto the sidewalk. He lay there defeated. "Interesting," Hunter said. "You got something I haven't seen, mister. It ain't street smarts. Though with you walk out here like you just got off a runway in the middle of Hell's Kitchen." "It was actually a musical," Skylar said. "Hey, you think we can get a picture or something? You're like brand new, so my followers will love you, and you can get a ton of new fans." Hunter rolled his eyes. He shot a web at Skylar's discarded phone on the sidewalk and retracted the ropes over to him. The phone sailed into his human hand, and he tossed it back to Skylar. Then, one of his spider limbs punched a robber hanging from the sill in the center. The man groaned in pain as Hunter stepped over to Skylar. His shadow washed over Skylar, but was dulled by the bright glow of the halo. "I'm not in this for the fan, kid," Hunter said. "You do anything for people, and they'll let you down. But you do things because it's right. That compass will always steer you in the right direction." "Whoa," Skylar said. "That's like deep." "A teacher of mine told me that," Hunter said as he placed a mirror-surfaced visor over his eyes. Then, he pressed a button on the side of the frame that locked onto Skylar's phone. "And it hasn't taken me wrong yet. Also, you weren't live streaming. You were recording, and I just deleted all the footage. One less court case for me to deal with. Adios." Hunter leaped into the air. His spider limbs propelled him into the sky and latched onto the nearest skyscraper he could find. Then, he crawled over the surface and disappeared into the fog of the New York night. Skylar gaped at the sky above him. The words bore through his brain, and the moments previous rushed over him. He actually fought against somebody. Okay, not necessarily a villain, but it was some nefarious being. And maybe he didn't beat them all himself, but he held them up long enough and stopped them from getting away with their crimes. As the feelings of panic and unease subsided within the pit of his stomach, the jovial rumble of exhilaration and pride ignited in his heart. More so than any instance he had been on stage beforehand. He wanted to keep feeling this way. Of saving others and his community. Of stopping crime and saving the day. And maybe, if he really gave it his all at this school, he would be able to do so. One day. Skylar opened his phone, scrolled down to his mom's contact, and typed in a message. "Mom, I think I know what I'm here for." Izuku's consciousness was traversing the fine line between reality and slumber. He tossed and turned in his hotel room bed. The thin covers did little to block the quiet breeze from the open window. With a shiver, Izuku threw off his covers and stretched his arms. He sat upright and smacked his lips. The day had been long enough finding out what he was needed for. However, all the information was making his head ache. He thought ending the digital universe and all for one would suffice in saving the world. But now he had to confront a new unknown villain with new unknown technology. Not only that, but the rate of people losing quirks could increase at any time. It worried Izuku, not because of his own self, but because of the implications this had on the peace and order that had been established in most places since Shigaraki was defeated. Would this person try to create a new all-for-one? Were they from this dimension? Izuku knew Moxie was doing well with One for All. But what if a formidable foe attempted to take her new quirk away from her? Would she be doomed? Izuku shook his head and got up. He stumbled with half-lidded eyes for the open window. Even if he was being forced back into teaching, he wanted to do his best for his new students. He hoped that snooping around to find the technology, or the culprit of this strange quirk-erasing phenomenon, would not harm his ability to connect with students. After all, despite more funding, this school in Detroit would still have many challenges. He heard of the myriad of fights and conflicts that occurred in the student body, as well as the expulsions due to illicit activities and contraband. He was facing a completely new situation, and he hoped he could better these kids' lives while also saving the world yet again. At the window, Izuku glanced at the city once more. Remember, this is what you are fighting for. This is what you are protecting. They all count on you, but just remember, the day may come where you have to count them. Izuku smiled at All Might's words playing in his head. Yes, he needed to have a little more faith in others. After all, he was still the symbol of peace in a way. He could influence and change people for the better, and he would do his best at honing the next generation wherever he went. Besides, he learned from his teaching mistakes with the previous Class 1A. He should be good at this by now. Although, Izuku thought to himself as he closed the window. Why did I even open this window? I don't remember wanting it open. I thought it was a much cooler entrance than just waking you up from the bed. Don't you think, Professor Deku? Izuku froze. That voice. No, it could not be real. Izuku saw no reflection in the window. However, the voice sounded as loud and as quick as he remembered. His eyes wide as a horrified child, Izuku panned his head to the side. Then, turned back at the speed of a dying slug. He had to be imaging the voice. There was no way this was real. At first, he saw nothing. Then, he blinked. And in his midst in that room was a boy. A ghost of a boy. A boy a bit shorter than him and thin that stood just feet away at the base of his bed. However, his old use's school uniform fit him perfectly as he grinned like a madman underneath the mop of black hair that scrawled over his scalp. His wild eyes sparkled with an uneasy, morbid gleam that made Izuku shiver. BBBL. You never got to tell me, Professor Deku, Blake Marseille said to a terrified Izuku Midoriya. Did I ace my final exam? Over the blinding white sun, a puff of smoke evaporated into the sweltering summer. The neighborhood was as decrepit and abandoned as ever. Things had changed little in this part of southern Detroit since the comet sailed over the globe and gave people quirks. The weeds still poked over the cracked sidewalks with kudzu invading the overgrown lawns littered with used needles and shards of cracked glass. Old buildings laden in brick that were previously corner stores were abandoned with weed smoke billowing out of the broken window. Not a single car drove over the pothole-riddled concrete like bullets wedged into the facade of the abandoned store. Behind a chain-link fence with razors on the top of the frame, the smoke continued to sift through the window. Traversing upward, the smoke trickled over the walls of the cracked brick towards the single sun spot that beamed down on the creator of the smoke. A young man with coconut brown hair, neatly styled over his white dress shirt and green pants, blew out another cloud as he leaned his back on the wall. I just thought it was a little overrated, that's all, the boy said in a calm, even tone. Steinbeck's easy to read, but it doesn't amount to much. Amount to much? A chirpy voice responded. The entire point of the book was to reflect, well, the world we live in now, I guess. One of poverty, mindless hedonism. What desperate people do at desperate times. Okay, but that's almost every book ever, he said to the girl next to him, pointing the joint at her. I mean, the theme is about as generic as it gets. It's not my fault they want us to read it. I mean, you want to talk about random. The girl took a swig of her water bottle. We had to start Murakami in World Lit yesterday. Murakami is good, he said. Look, if I wanted to read about some lonely middle-aged guy's sexual fantasies with his high school friends, I'd just read some fanfiction, the girl said. The boy laughed right as the alarm on his phone went off. He grabbed it by his foot and switched the noise off. The girl straightened out her hair and then took out a small makeup compact from her green backpack. She flipped it open and tugged on a strand of her blonde hair that she tied into a ponytail. Her deep emerald eyes looked back at her heart-shaped face, and she patted away a bead of sweat with the foundation sponge. When she saw her face was spotless save for the freckles over her nose and cheeks, she closed the mirror and brushed away some of the silt on her green school uniform. Well, I can walk you over to St. Bart's today. I'm ditching the rest of the day. The boy next to the girl got up and wedged the joint into his mouth. It hung from the corner of his dry lips when he reached a hand down to her. She grabbed it and lifted herself up with his strength. You ditched last week to go see that dumb Deku movie, she said. You're gonna get kicked out. Please, he took out his joint and extended it to her. That place is a diploma mill. I could stab someone and probably still graduate. By the way, you want a hit? No, thanks. Come on. Just one. You never had, Lynn. I don't need it. Lynn Taylor shrugged her pink backpack over her pink blazer that she wore over her school uniform. Besides, one of those nuns will smell it on me. They'll already smell it on you. Yeah, but not on my breath, Lynn said. It's just Lynn. You act like I'm doing crack or something. Are you? Okay, forget I asked, he said. Let's go. The pair skipped over the broken glass and toppled display cases towards the ramshackle wooden door. The boy kicked it open, and Lynn slipped through the crack to exit into the quiet block. The blazing sun battered over her thick uniform as the cicadas chirped uninterrupted within the thistles of the wild grass. Her black boots brushed through the rough terrain before she hopped over the smashed concrete step back onto the empty sidewalk. Behind her, the boy shut the door. What are you going to do all day? Lynn asked. I don't know. Wait till you get out or something. Okay, Jason, Lynn said as the boy started to walk with her down the road. She squinted at him with the bright sun casting a harsh glow on the street. You can't just hang out by the school. Someone will think you're cutting. I am. Cutting from my school, Lynn said. Then, they bring you in. Then, they find out you're at the wrong school. Then they call your parents. Then, you die. They don't care that much, Jason said. Lynn sighed and looked over at her best friend. She pursed her lips as a bead of sweat dripped down to the rim of his glasses. At first glance, Jason seemed to be the typical nerdy kid. In a way, he was. His grades were always top-notch, and he aced any test that was thrown his way. Yet, he was as combative as a heavyweight boxer when it came to his teachers and authority. Based on the bruise blooming under the collar of his shirt, he had been in yet another fight at the rundown excuse of a school he routinely left to see her. Meanwhile, Lynn was in some ways the opposite. She looked as much the pristine, dressed-up popular girl that one would imagine in a teenage high school comedy. A longtime leader on the cheerleading squad for the private school about a mile north of Jason's, she was expected to keep up with the latest breaking story on the gossip mill and fan the flames of such rumors to her friends. Yet, she was as intrigued with intellectual discussions on popular culture and artistic theories as Jason had been when they first met on that playground all those years ago. Therefore, this meeting of the minds in an abandoned gas station halfway between their schools was a near daily occurrence at this point. "You can get into my school, Lynn said. "You know I won't fit in." "Who cares, Jason?" Lynn said. "I mean, it's a Catholic private school. The only one that would really fit in with all the rules is like Jesus or something. I don't even fit in at my own school. Because it's a drug den. You said it yourself. You're smarter than them. You're better. My folks couldn't afford it. There's help. I'm not Catholic." "Just pretend," Lynn said. "Stand when everyone else does. Eat the communion. Do the sign of the cross. You're good to go." "I wouldn't know what to say at Mass." "I don't know what to say at Mass." Lynn grabbed Jason's thin arm and stopped him at an intersection. "And I'm Catholic. You just mumble along to what everyone else says. Easy." "Well, the school year is almost over," Jason said. "And I'm already signed up at Wiseau High across town. You can come over if you want. Unless you want to spend the next 4 years getting smacked with a yardstick." Lynn let go of his arm. With a slight blush, she hugged herself and gazed down at a sewage grate covered in moss. Then, she leaned on the crooked stop sign riddled with graffiti. "I'm not going there next year." Jason frowned. He stepped towards her as she tried to avoid his gaze. You moving?" "No, I will," Lynn said. "I'm signing up for the new school they announced last week. The one Deku will be teaching at." Jason pushed up his glasses and cocked his head to the side in a curious amusement. "That new school? The United States Academy of whatever, right?" Lynn scoffed. "Yeah, that school. They just announced openings for it, and they're requiring half the students be in state. And I applied for the merit-based spots they had." "Well," Jason said, "your parents should have no problem affording it if you can't get in like that." Lynn looked up at Jason, who turned away from her towards the street. He placed the joint back in his mouth to take a drag. Lynn frowned and snatched the joint out of his mouth and threw it on the ground. She stomped on it and scrubbed into the hot asphalt. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lynn asked. "What? If I can't get in like that? You're saying my grades aren't good enough." "No, I'm just saying," Jason said. "It seems like you got this figured out, so don't let me stop you." "Don't you want to come?" Lynn asked. "You can make it in, too. If I get in, then you definitely could." "I'm not going," Jason said. "Why not?" Lynn asked. "I want you there. At an actual school. And they're building dorms, so you can stay there instead of at home. Stay with me." "I told you why I can't," Jason said. "What I want to do. You're the one that wants to be a pro hero, not me. I mean, my quirk is reading really fast. Lynn, you can do all of the crazy bending and moving stuff. All the saving the day stuff. Me, I'm not even a support guy. I'm some background character. You know?" The boy looked out onto the empty road. A road that stretched for miles into the warm blur of the summer afternoon. Lynn stared out with him when she heard keys jangling behind her. "Imagine the car keys to that Gran Torino on here, Lynn. And I can drive anywhere I want. Alaska, Mexico, wherever I want. And my grandparents promised they'd give it to me for my 16th birthday. I officially asked them the other day. And when I get that car, Lynn, I'm driving. And I'm not coming back." "Why not?" Lynn asked. "What do I got to come back for?" "Me," Lynn said. "I kinda thought you'd want to be here for me." Jason sighed and pocketed his keys. Lynn stared down at the sidewalk and blinked away the saline that stung at her eyes. She kept her arms clung around her voluptuous frame with her gaze averting Jason's eyes that bore into her soul. A long silence suffocated the two, and Lynn could only hear the sound of her wheezing nostrils trying to capture the thick air that boiled in the shadeless concrete sea. Then, Lynn's gaze was invaded by the ragged, torn and scuffed cream shoes of Jason who loomed over her. A hand reached over and quirked her chin upward. Jason was just a few inches away with his eyes lidded. "Kiss me, then." Lynn's breath hitched as she took a minuscule step back. "What? Kiss me? We've never done that before, right?" "Yeah, because we haven't." "What the hell?" "So let's do it," Jason said. "If we both feel something, then I'll stay." "Feel something?" Lynn asked. "What am I supposed to feel?" "I guess we're gonna find out, right?" Jason said with the ghost of a smile on his face. Lynn leaned forward just slightly. Her mouth dropped agape with the edges pursued in a subconscious anticipation. As close and as handsome as her friend was, she had never considered doing anything like this with him. Well, maybe once during a conversation with some of the cheerleading girls at school, but she slapped herself to forget of the notion. Their bond was supposed to be different, more sacred than just the petty pleasures of making out. And yet, she had to admit she was curious as well. While she had certainly had her share of late-night parties with the more popular members of the school, Jason was the reprieve to all of those pressures. A hidden oasis of calm and intellect that she could escape to when keeping up with her clique was too draining on her soul. In fact, the entire time she had known him, he had always been the constant. On top of that, despite her ability to basically pick whoever she wanted from the football team, Jason had the cute nerdy look down, and his lips appeared to be surprisingly pliable. With the sound of a revving engine crescendoing down the street, she tilted her head and lifted herself up on her tiptoes. Then, she used her quirk to bend her feet further. She decreased the density of her bones in her feet and increased it in her toes. The extra strength allowed her to lift up even higher to be eye level with Jason. His soft, curled hair was in reach, and Lynn placed a hand within the feathery locks. "Are you using your quirk right now?" "Yes," Lynn said. "Now shut up." "Brrrr." She leaned in closer. Jason closed his eyes. "Brrrr." Then she did the same. "Brrrr." They leaned in closer. 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 All they could hear was their own breath tickling one another's face. Brrrr. And the engine charging right at them. Lynn opened her eyes in time to see the sedan spinning off the road right towards them on the intersection. With a huff, she grabbed Jason by the shoulders and threw him out of the way. The side of the car rocketed towards her with smoke screeching from the tires. Lynn planted her feet and stretched out her hands towards the black sedan that roared at her. It bumped over the curb and swiped up onto the sidewalk. Hunched over, Lynn felt the strange vibration warp over her body as she activated her quirk again. Her hands became as heavy as cinder blocks with the car about to impact her. She let out a quick yell and opened up her palms at the car. The bone within her hands burrowed with strength as her fingers flexed together to enhance the support. Her hands now extraordinarily dense with nearly unbreakable bone. She closed her eyes and looked away. Bang! The car stopped on a dime and rocked in its spot. The windows shattered outward with a deep dent bashed into the side. The doors broke inward off their hinges with plastic trim flying off the body. Lynn shouted and flew backwards a few feet. However, she released the density from her hands and flipped over in midair. With her feet now parallel to the ground, she blasted the density into her feet. The change in weight distribution caused her to snap down onto the ground. Slam. Lynn landed onto the sidewalk with a small crater broken into the concrete. The cracks emanated over the entire walkway down the street. Lynn steadied her upper body, and she stood stalwart like a statue in front of the car. Jason, who had rolled onto the grassy patch next to the sidewalk, looked up and found his head inches away from the smoking grill of the vehicle. He gasped out and squeaked with trepidation at the car. Then, he pushed himself back and sat right by the chain-link fence feet from the parked and destroyed car. "You okay?" Lynn stood up straight and nodded at Jason. Jason creaked out a response with a dumb nod. Then, the driver's side door opened. Well, the driver attempted to open it. However, at the pull of the handle, the entire door popped off the hinge and collapsed onto the ground. It rocked and wiggled on its axis. Instead, frozen in the seat with his fist extended, was the driver of the vehicle. A certain green-haired man wearing a familiar pro-hero outfit. On the plane, Izuku's head lolled forward like a dead doll. His eyes shut. He snored with his entire body about to fall onto the seat in front of him. Hawks, next to the tired hero, shook his shoulder. "Hey, Deku." With a quick snore, Izuku perked up and forced his eyes wide open. They were bloodshot with his face pale and sunken from the long night. He shot a panicked glance to Hawks and let out a terse yelp. "I'm okay." Hawks chuckled. "Calm down. We're landing in like 10 minutes. Izuku blew out a deep breath. He clutched his chest and spied the skyline of Detroit as the plane descended. "You're really tired today," Hawks said. "I thought you'd be used to jet lag by now." Izuku rubbed his eyes. "No, it's not that. I just had a bad dream last night." Hawks raised an eyebrow. "About what?" With a sharp glance, Izuku stared straight ahead. His eyes quivered at the recollection of the shocking scenes the previous night. "Sorry," Izuku said. "I won't let it get in the way of anything." "It's not in the way," Hawks said. "Go ahead. I want to know. As long as it's not about me. I once had a fan said she dreamed about me, and then I made the mistake of asking her what happened in it. Biggest mistake of my life." "No, nothing like that," Izuku said. "It was about someone I couldn't save." "You mean in real life? Or in the digital universe?" "Really, both," Izuku said. "I consider it both." "Like memories?" "No," Izuku said. "No, I had one of them. One of my old students in the digital universe. It was a dream where he was in the same hotel room I was in. Like, I was in bed. And I remember it being very cold. And the window was open. So I tried to close it, and he was there." "Who?" "Blake," Izuku said. "You know Blake Marseille." "Oh, right," Hawks said. "The chatterbox with those batchet parents." "But he felt real, Hawks," Izuku said. He stared down at his red shoes and clutched his throat. "It seemed like he was really there. Sounded like it, too. His voice was exactly how I remembered. His hair was how I remembered. And he spoke to me." "What did he say?" Izuku blinked a few times. He was hesitant to go further into what was said to Hawks. As much as he appreciated Hawks being there, he was unsure if he wanted to share something so personal with him yet. So, Izuku shook his head with his eyes wide and confused. "Nothing," he said. "I think it was just hello or something. But it seems so real. And I know it isn't. But I just thought that I was getting better at this. Not thinking about Robin and Leo and even Kakin. The people I could have saved if I had just made the right move. And ever since my class graduated, I just replay it a lot more. And I wonder a lot more. What was the right move? What could I have done better? I could have saved them all somehow. I could have better. I could have." Izuku shrugged at a fail for words. Hawks, seeing his mental impasse, leaned back and put his headphones on. He glanced up at the ceiling and turned on the air vent. The soft breeze tickled at Izuku's shoulder. "Well, you can talk to me whenever you want," Hawks said. "And look, I can shout till I'm blue in the face about how you shouldn't feel guilty or how you did your best. But I know that's not good enough. But, Deku, there's one thing I've learned in all of this. Regret is ghost will haunt you forever. If you let it. So, don't give it a chance, okay?" Izuku saw Hawks smile at him from the corner of his eye. However, the young man shook his head and thought back to the scene the previous night. The long moments that felt like hours. The words said. The way Blake's face still appeared to be right in front of him, as if he was standing right there. I'm not sure, Izuku said, if I'll have much of a choice. Izuku, still in the driver's seat, blinked while staring out at Lin. She gaped at the man and covered her mouth in shock at what just happened. The group examined one another, all of them afraid to make the first move. The car hissed with the occasional pop of a destroyed gasket causing them to flinch. Oil leaked out from the bottom of the vehicle, leaving a dark puddle that was absorbed by the thirsty concrete below. Smoke wafted from the brakes and the engine block that was now destroyed along with the crumpled body. Silence. Then, a throat cleared. Do either of you have directions? Izuku said. To International Island? The black sedan hobbled on two flat tires over the broken road. The hood hissed with smoke that blew out of the engine bay with the frame rocking like a ship in chopped waters. Izuku wrestled with the steering wheel with his shoulders bumping into the girl who sat in the passenger seat. The car rumbled at the speed of a snail through the downtown street towards the bridge by the waterfront park to the school's island. On the sidewalk, some pedestrians stared and others took photos. With the driver's side completely naked for all to see, Izuku kept his head down with sparks screeching out of the flat left front, now grinding its wheels on the concrete. The car jostled while rounding a corner before confronting the base of the bridge to International Island. Right as the grill rolled onto the surface of the bridge, the nose caught the concrete and splintered off the car. A loud crunch broke from the destroyed body with a deafening pop erupting from the engine. The hood of the car spewed out flames, and the vehicle refused to go further. I think this is as far as we can go, Izuku said to Lin in the next seat. We can walk the bridge. Lin took off her seatbelt and kicked out the door. The portal fell off the hinge and collapsed onto the ground. She walked out into the bridge with Izuku, who accompanied her. Some tourists at the park snapped photos of the burning vehicle, while the other two left it at the base of the bridge. They started to trudge up the bridge past a line of construction vehicles and dump trucks preparing the school. Part of her was slightly perturbed that she was almost run over by a car. However, she was also quite thrilled at the fact that it was Deku that had crashed into her. She was sure that she could use this to her advantage. So, again, I'm sorry for almost running you over, Izuku said. I forgot that I actually don't know much about driving a car till I rented it out. Lin smiled and twirled a strand of her hair. Oh, it's okay. I honestly wanted to show off in front of Jason, so I was waiting for the opportunity. So that's your quirk, Izuku said. Some super strength. No, it's bone density, Lin said. I can make my bones really strong and dense or really light and fluid. It's pretty useful for cheerleading and stopping pro heroes who don't know how to drive. Izuku's face flushed red. He rubbed his cheek and averted his gaze from the girl. Again, sorry. I've just been very distracted lately. I just can't believe you're actually here, Lin said. Teaching at this new school. Here in Detroit. I applied just a few days ago. I mean, I don't want to ask you for anything special, even if you almost ran me over. No, it's okay, Izuku said. I'll take an extra close look at your application. I don't make the final call, but I'm sure I can influence the board. For both you and your friend. Lin sighed and gazed out over the side of the cobblestone bridge. The water in the large lake rushed past with a clear crystal sparkle for the bright summer day. He doesn't want to go, she said. He's going to get in this car his grandparents are giving him and driving away. Izuku glanced at Lin, who had a dejected expression on her face. But isn't he your age? Yup. He can't abandon school to drive around in a car, Izuku said. I'm sure social services or his parents at least would. His parents don't care, Lin said. And the city isn't going to care either. Honestly, I'm probably the only person that does. Oh, Izuku said. You two are close. We grew up together, Lin said. But around 6th grade, his parents lost their jobs. They had to move away. Not far, but away from my school district. And then, I don't know. They fell off the wagon. And Jason started caring less and less. He just kinda thinks of himself as some sort of background character. An extra, Izuku said. A flash of Kaken's face evaporated before his eyes. Lin chuckled when they got to the summit of the bridge. Yeah, an extra. There's only so much I can do, you know? He's not like the guys at my school where all you gotta do is wink and smile at them. So, how do I save him? The pair sauntered down the other side of the bridge. Izuku gave a solemn look at the girl who kept her gaze down to her shoes. She hugged herself with a brisk breeze flowing through her blonde hair. He thought back to the past few years and all of the actions he took to help his friends out of tough situations. He stepped closer to Lin and narrowed the gap between them. She was already a bit tall for her age, almost up to his shoulders. You know, I used to think it was so easy to save people, Izuku said. Well, maybe not easy, but simple. Stop the building from falling. Put out the fire. Rescue the cat. But I think the most important way to save someone is a lot more difficult. And sometimes, you come across people that don't really want saving. I wish I could force them, but I can't. All you can do is just let them know that you'll be here for them when they need you. Lin drew in a deep breath. She relaxed and loosened her muscles down the cobblestone bridge to the island. Okay, Lin said. Did you come up with that? It was a pretty good speech. Izuku smiled and flashed his teeth at her. Nope. A student taught me that. At the base of the bridge, a guard post sat right by a giant golden gate. The surface of the portal was filled in and obtuse, so it was more like a protective wall that kept the gaze of tourists or onlookers blocked from seeing inside. The guard, dressed in a periwinkle uniform, stepped out and blocked the front of the gate. Excuse you, the guard said. Are you Izuku Midoriya? It's Midoriya. But yes, Izuku said. The guard conjured up a clipboard out of nowhere and held up a magnifying glass to the paper. He examined it with a strong expression before combing his eyes over the pair before him. And who is this little girl? She's not on my list. Izuku patted Lin on the shoulder. Oh, this is a future student of mine. I just met her outside, so I thought I'd just give her a quick little tea. She's not on the list, the guard said. If you're not on the list, then get the hell out of here. But she is a potential student. Yeah? And I'm a potential supermodel. No list, no in. Lin, however, smiled and saddled up next to Izuku. As the two argued back and forth, she had a feeling she was going to be in good hands. Okay, but she's with me, Izuku said. I think it's okay. No list, no enter, the guard screamed. Comprehend. What is going on here? A flume of wind brushed over the dirt on the pathway. In front of the gates, a pair of black boots landed just inches away from the guard. In his typical yellow jacket, Hawks lowered his wings and pulled up the golden visor over his eyes onto the top of his head. Oh my gosh, Lin shrieked. As level-headed as she thought of herself, she was not above fangirling over one of the most suave and smooth pro-heroes in the world. It's Hawks. Kago, Izuku said. Can you tell this guard we are fine? Hawks nodded at the guard. It's fine. The guard flashed his long clipboard. But he's not in the list of visitors. I decide the list of visitors, Hawks said. After all, I am the principal. Both Izuku and Lin gasped. Lin, however, had a wide grin on her face with her eyes practically flashing hearts at Hawks. You mean you get to be our principal? Are you serious? Izuku said. Well, the person who was going to be your principal had to take some time off. Something about being torn apart by some Lisa girl, Kago said. So for the first couple of months, I will be the one that is in control of this school. But you don't know how to run a school. I know as much as any other public school principal, I imagine, Hawks said. Besides, as long as you're here, I can be taught the ropes. I'll just glide for a few months, and we'll be good. I also get to be close to the school to keep tabs on our project. Keiko said. Oh, right, Izuku said. Yes, that will be helpful. And who are you, miss? Hawks smiled at the girl next to Izuku. Lin skipped to Hawks and grabbed his hand. She shook it with the vigor of an earthquake, which made Hawks grit his teeth at her strict grip. I'm Merlin Taylor, but you can call me Lin. I've followed you for years online. I was here when you came over with a want to take down the weird group that hated people with quirks, and now you're going to be here at my school, Lin giggled. That's great, Hawks said. Though, I'd prefer to get through the school year with all of my appendages intact. Lin stopped and noticed her grip crushing Hawks' hand. She deactivated her quirk and released the density in her hand's bones to shrink back to normal status. Sorry. Still getting used to it. No big. So, without further ado, Hawks said, would you two like an early look at the facility? Lin hopped up and down while clapping her hands together. She grabbed Izuku's arm and lugged him over. He cried out with his red shoes digging through the dirt leading up to the golden gates. Izuku plastered on an uncomfortable smile, the pain of the grip erased by the enthusiasm shared by his future student. Maybe they won't be as crazy as my last class, Izuku said. This could actually be an enjoyable time for all of us. Maybe I can save the day again. At the base of the gate, Hawks nodded at the guard. The man in uniform narrowed his eyes at the two intruding upon his gate, but he decided it was best to acquiesce to Hawks. He went back inside his guard shack and pressed a red button. The gates lurched backwards and opened up. The bright shine reflected the sunlight down to Izuku, and he shielded his eyes from the white canvas that erupted from the metallic gates. The entire world turned white. Then the light disintegrated as the gates opened entirely to reveal paradise. At least, that's what it looked to the golden retriever, who stood perched at the precipice of the school grounds. A long dirt path cut through a massive grass-coated courtyard flanked by cherry blossoms that waved next to either side of the path. Beyond the blossoms were tall oak trees that coated the entire meadow, and were already housing robins and blue jays that glided above the sea of new students and parents seeing of their children. About 100 yards from the campus wall was a marble fountain with a small facsimile of the Statue of Liberty. From the top of its torch spat out a jet of crystalline water that splattered into the marble basin that swam in a circle with an immaculate shine from the blazing sun above. Most of the meadow was shaded from the trees save for a wide clearing at the corner of the front courtyard area for recreation. Beyond the fountain were gold-coated steps that led to nothing short of a castle. A decadent, rich golden building that rose up to a top floor that narrowed into a spire of a star that blinked yellow with a powerful light within its confines. The opaque glass windows on each room of the building reflected light and was unseeable from outdoors. However, the gold brick that made up the school ran backwards towards the other side of the campus, all the way to the back wall that stopped about 50 yards away from the shoreline of the island. Merle Lawson was speechless at just how beautiful the atrium was in the new school. It was better than any of the brochures he read back in Texas. The stark sheen off the marble steps made his eyes water from the blinding shine. I reckon this is the place for us, Merle said. Right, Sam? By his brown cowboy boots, a puffy German shepherd barked with a happy wag of his tail. Sam the dog twirled around Merle in an excited dance, as the tall boy gasped in awe at the news helicopters that circled above the makeshift forest in the front walking path. Behind him and past the gates, the parking lot and the main bridge to Detroit were packed with news vehicles and parents dropping off students. Residents of the city, even those without students, walked to the main entrance of the school to catch a glimpse of the beauty that sparkles on Ty Island, off the waterfront of downtown Detroit. I guess we should head up to the auditorium, right, boy? Sam, somehow knowing exactly where to go, barked his approval and hustled towards the golden doors that towered over the entire courtyard. Merle followed through the crowd of ostentatious students and reports wearing pantsuits and shouting over microphones the historic occasion. Merle noticed, based off his cowboy hat and his corduroy vest, that he was already a bit out of place for this neck of the woods. However, he shook off those insecure feelings and marched for the front entrance. There was nothing that he and Sam could not handle. They pressed onward to the school. Their course was smooth and true until the dog ran right through the legs of a poor, unsuspecting boy whose head was buried in a map just a few feet in front of the water fountain. "Wah!" Leon cried it in a reserved but unmanly way. He toppled over the edge of the fountain and flailed his arms to regain balance. Sadly, Merle had not noticed the shorter boy and ran after Sam. His elbow clipped Leon's chest, which caused him to lose whatever balance he had regained. This impact caused Leon to fall backwards instead away from the fountain, right into the unforgiving dirt path that would no doubt ruin his clothes, his nicest zip-up cotton jacket with gray pants, and any hole at a decent first impression. Leon cursed himself as a few people spies his descent onto the ground. Already his first day, and he was embarrassing himself in front of everyone. His mind went blank, hopelessly forgetful of the fact that his quirk may help him in this scenario. Instead, he only thought of the cold, hard dirt that he was about to fall onto in the courtyard along with the mocking faces that would laugh at him. He fell, all right, onto a pair of soft hands. Above him, a smooth face belonging to a person with golden eyes beamed down on him. Leon's mouth was agape when his arms relaxed onto his chest. His heels dug into the ground, and he lay frozen within the person's arms. It was a boy around his age, wearing a pristine ivory jacket and pants with, oddly enough, a yellow crop top over part of his torso, which Leon personally felt defeated the purpose of the jacket. But he was no fashion expert, he demurred. If one did not see Leon's fall, one would think there was a ballroom dance occurring between the two strangers. Skylar, holding up the dazed boy, processed the strange situation. He had just caught this boy, and as he looked into the brightest, electric blue eyes he had ever seen, a quiet and even menacing smirk etched into his face. Wow, he's, really cute, he thought. Then, he looked down at his shirt where a small name tag was pinned to his chest pocket. Leon, Class 1A. "Well, hello there, fellow classmate," Skylar said. Leon, realizing his predicament, felt his cheeks emanate a dull sheen of blue. His body gave off an electric bolt that snapped at Skylar's fingers. He yelped and released Leon, which caused the boy to plummet to the ground. Slam. Leon groaned out and rolled back up to his feet. His silver hair, now disheveled, spiked over his face with his arms flailing about to regain his balance. "Sorry," Leon said. "I wasn't paying attention." "Excuse me," a blonde girl about his height popped up behind them. Leon spun on his heels and back up to Skylar in surprise. "Do you know the way to the auditorium? This map isn't very helpful." Skylar saw the Class 1A sign on this blonde girl's tight pink dress and smiled again. "Wow, she's really cute, too. I hit the jackpot. Is my whole class this hot?" His hopes were dashed when he felt the shadow of a presence cover the sun from the top of his head. "I know. I bummed like 2 cigarettes just to afford the train over here." Skylar turned towards the figure. Now, it was his turn to yelp. Behind him was a tall, lanky man hunched over in a thick black trench coat. His face was normal with yellow eyes twinkling at him. However, it was the imposing figure's hair that shocked him. Long, purple tendrils that wriggled around like the twitching heads of snakes. At the ends of each tendril, a pair of eyes that blinked on different individual occasions. It appeared they moved independent of the boy's own functions and surveyed the entire area around him. Some of them settled around his slumped shoulders that were covered by the black t-shirt of a punk band with ripped skinny jeans clung to his legs. Skylar leapt back and upwards right into Leon's midsection. Without thought, Leon held out his arms and grabbed Skylar, who wrapped an arm around his neck. The boy cradled in Leon's arms recoiled at the other man, while Leon just stared in confusion. "Oh, you're in the class, too," Lynn said. "I'm Lynn." "Ivan," the boy said with a playful, even conniving tone. "By the way, you dropped your wallet." One of the tendril reached over to Lynn. On top of the purple skin was a wallet balanced just above one of the eyes. Lynn clapped her hands in amusement and grabbed the wallet. "Oh my gosh, thanks," Lynn said. "I didn't even know it was gone." Ivan tucked the extra dollar bills he had in his back pocket further inside, while he nodded at the girl. "No problem. All in a hero's day of work." "Well, we should get going then." Lynn pocketed her wallet. For a second, she thought it weighed a tad lighter than before in her small hands, but she paid no further mind. She walked with Ivan to the school's entrance along with the sea of other students and parents trotting to the main building. Meanwhile, Skylar realized he was still being held by Leon. Skylar brushed his proto-wings forward and uprighted himself. He planted his feet next to Leon and noticed he was just a hair shorter than the boy. Although Leon still had a blank expression examining Skylar, as if he were a bird passing in the sky above. "So," Skylar straightened out his white suit jacket and brushed off any errant pieces of lint or dust collected on it. "Shall we?" "Oh, okay," Leon said. The two headed for the entrance. Skylar gave another glance at Leon, who had his focus on the giant fountain outside the cavernous golden doors. Skylar smiled in approval at what he saw, and he could not wait to see what transpired this school year. Down a winding staircase just off to the side of the main atrium, past the sandstone walls and immaculate marble steps, was a steel door. On the side of the door was a passcode which would allow a person inside. The door slid open. Two electricians wiped their brows and lugged their tools out the room onto the staircase. "I don't even know why they need this tech," one of them said. "Shouldn't these kids be learning math or something?" "Some new technology from Wright," the other added. "Might be for the support folks more than the heroes." "Whatever. No kid is gonna understand all of it anyway." They started to trudge up the stairs. "Do you understand it all?" "Nah, but I don't understand much. Explains why I still live in Detroit." As the two talked the day away up the stairs, the door closed. However, inside this room was a giant workshop filled with every support tool imaginable. Rows of workbenches surrounded the perimeter of the gigantic area laden with impermeable acid-resistant charcoal flooring and beige walls. To the inside of the room, odd experimentation stations with top-of-the-line beakers and analysis computers that sat dormant ready for the school year. This was the support lab, and the rows of lab coats and protective wear ran from the emergency showers in the corner, all the way to opposite wall, which held a large computer screen that stretched above a control console. All of the stations and computer screens were shut off. However, in the corner was a strange platform with silver support beams that pointed at the center. A glass tube surrounded the platform, and a small desk with a CPU connected to a black screen sat next to it. Silent and unpowered. Until a beep. Then another beep. The CPU powered on. A green light turned on the modem with a blinking yellow light next to it underneath the word labeled transmission. Then the computer screen came to life. A creaking sound emitted from the monitor with the beeping increasing in volume. The screen had a blinking cursor. The rest of the platform came to life with a white light beaming down from the ceiling inside the glass tube. On the screen, a message typed out onto the black. "Incoming transmission. Location, unknown. Arrival, pending permission." Then, the last word was erased. Permission override code initiated. Arrival, approved. Date of transmission, today. Date of approval, SA3261996. Arrival in T-10 seconds. The timer on the screen counted down. The machine whirred with the lights blinking faster and faster. The light grew into a blinding star that erupted within the tube. The light swirled with a loud siren blaring throughout the entire room. The ground shook with the desk rocking back and forth. 3, 2, 1. Beep. Transmission complete. The light evaporated into the gray darkness of the unlit room. Then, the computer shut off, and the beeping from the CPU ceased. The shaking ceased, and the room was again as dormant as it was beforehand. Except this time, there was a person in its midst. Within the glass tube, a stunned young man stood pin straight as the most decorated soldier. A tall man just above 6 feet. His emerald green eyes wandered like a drunken fly around the room in shock. His chestnut brown hair draped over his head with silver tips kissing the tops of his eyebrows that were arched in surprise at what he was witnessing. The tube rose up with a hydraulic hiss. First his brown combat boots, then his cargo pants, then the tight black muscle shirt over his torso became exposed to the new environment. When given the chance, he ducked his head under the edge and stepped out onto the floor of the lab. His step was ginger, like he was concerned about sinking into the surface of this new landscape. However, his foot gained purchase, and he stepped out onto the new ground. He pulled out a pistol from his pocket. A long-barreled firearm that could launch 50 caliber bullets at the speed of sound. He gripped it by his chest and snaked through the rows of experiment tables. His heels rolled over the floor with his toes departing from the surface, leaving hardly a single sound as he traversed through the strange room. Then, another beep. This time, from the large device in his pocket. The boy looked around. He saw nobody in sight and reached into his pocket. A giant cinder block of a phone eased out of his pants. He pulled up the antenna and held up the tan brick to his hands. The weight was heavy with the surface cold on the ancient cellular device. "Riley?" An older voice croaked over the speaker. "Riley, can you copy?" "I copy," Riley Garrick said. He continued to walk through the room and rake over the odd inventions and technology in the lab. "Great. What do you see?" "We can't get a signal down there right now for the cameras." "It's a lab," Riley said. "Just like you all said." "Very good," the voice said with static shanking into Riley's ear. "We're going to get the signal in your eyes working soon. In the meantime, you'll have to report to us what you see." "Copy," Riley said. He broke into a jog and arrived at the steel door leading to the staircase. "Okay, the staircase should just be a push button to get out. Once you get there, head up the staircase and blend in. We already uploaded your info to the bursar's office, so when you need to sign in, you'll be assigned to your class." "Understood," Riley said. He bopped the red button, which caused another beep to echo from the speaker above. The steel door slid open to reveal the dark staircase. "And Riley," the voice said, "remember, don't blow your cover. This mission could mean everything. For you. For us. For humanity. It might be our one chance. We're all counting on you." "Understood," Riley said. Despite his calm, stoic demeanor, his heart was racing inside his chest with the velocity of a cheetah stalking prey. "By the way, Riley," another voice said. One that was much more sly and lackadaisical. "How is the air in the future?" Riley rolled his eyes. He sucked in a deep breath through his nose and considered the scent. "It smells like caramel." "All right, everyone," the voice said. "Write that down. The future smells like caramel." Riley hit the button on the phone. The sound in the device powered down into silence. With some trepidation, he thrusted the brick back into his pocket. With a terse breath, muscled his legs forward over the precipice. Then, he trudged up the stairs. The sound of the main hall grew louder. Children and adults alike hummed with jabber and discussion melding into a loud buzz that echoed over the stone walls. It grew louder along with the light from the atrium that rose in tint with every step into the school. Once he reached the top of the platform, He holstered his pistol on the strap from his thigh hidden in his cargo pants. He took another deep breath as a slit of light landed on his face from the gap in the door. His mission was one that could not be failed, and he knew that the survival of humanity was what rested between him and his home, his family, himself, the entire world. With a quick huff, the time traveler known as Riley Garrick burst through the door and into the light of his new school. The auditorium was a loud chamber of sound that overwhelmed Melanie. With a folder detailing her new class location under her arm, she scanned the rows of marble benches that circled around a central elevated platform. A glass window outside overlooked the western skyline of the shining Detroit skyscrapers over the placid waters of the strait. Reporters and cameras surrounded the concrete moat around the platform as more students piled into the curved stands. The scent of honeysuckle wafted through the air vents in the rafters that hung from the ceiling that was invisible with a black ether clung over it. The obsidian walls ensnaring the room reflected the golden trim that gleamed on the edges of the long marble tables where students and parents alike sat in rigid plastic chairs for the orientation session to begin. Melanie saw the section in the middle and saw an empty seat around the center. She excused herself past a few of the older third-year students and scooted towards the middle seat. She sat down and placed the folder on the table. With a quick heave, she opened the thick stack of papers and read the opening page. A warm bristle of pride ran over her spine with the words typed into the folder signifying that she had finally made it to the school of her dreams. United States Academy of Heroic Sciences. Before she could read, however, a quick snore cut through her attention. Melanie set the paper down and looked over at the slumped-over figure next to her. A nearly emaciated girl pale as a ghost blinked in rapid succession when her bony shoulders jolted back in her seat. The girl, with drool dried on the edge of her lips, wiped at her puffed cheeks while her head threatened to droop again. "Excuse me, fellow student," Melanie said in a loud, vivacious tone. "It appears you are quite lethargic today." The girl startled and held up her palms in a defensive fashion. However, she calmed when she saw the bright, pink-haired girl smiling at her. "Oh," she said in a soft tone. "I'm just jet-lagged. I flew from Jap." Then, the girl's head fell forward. Her arms flung limp at her side. Her fingers swung dormant at the tip of the girl's blue school miniskirt. She began to snore again. "Well, I've got just the thing for you," Melanie said. She pulled out a small packet of a crunched substance and held it up to the girl's nose. When she sniffed the powerful aroma, the girl perked wide awake and hopped in her seat. "Smelling salts," Melanie said. "I packed them for the bus ride here from Toronto. I wanted to be wide awake for such an exciting day. Don't you think?" "That's okay," she said. "I'll be awake to pay attention." Her words trailed off before her head began to drop down to her chest again. "My name is Melanie, by the way, Melanie Wicker," she said and extended a hand out to the girl. She grabbed the tired student's hand and shook it under her own cognizance. Aimu's body shook from the rigor of Melanie's grip with the girl already nodding off. "Oh, I'm Aimu," the Japanese girl said. "Aimu-a." Bang. Aimu's head slammed into the table. The entire counter shook with the impact. Some of the other students glanced over at the dozing girl. Melanie, still with the clammy hands of Aimu wrapped on hers, placed the hand on the table with the gentle touch of a nudging dog. Speaking of dogs, Sam the dog popped his head over the table just behind Melanie. He rested his chin on the cool surface and wagged his tail. Next to him, thick cowboy boots clacked and clinked off the marble floor. Merle tried to wiggle his large, muscular frame past the other students before throwing himself into his seat. "It's weird, Sam," Merle croaked with a toothpick in his mouth. "I feel underdressed and overdressed at the same time." Clack. Right before Merle placed his hands on the table, a pair of pristine red sneakers rested on the surface. "Yeah, it's like some guys are dressed up like they're from the hood or something," a mirthless, uppity voice said. And then there's others straight that think they're on Project Runway or something. The pair of shoes belonged to the man laying on the chair with his arms crossed behind his head. A boy with azure eyes and red hair tied up in a ponytail leaned his head back over the headrest of the chair. His red t-shirt stretched over his long torso with a green dress shirt unbuttoned waved in the soft breeze of the air conditioning above. You, though, the boy said in a loud, jocular volume. You have character in how you dress. I can tell right away what you are. You know it's pretty hard to get someone right away. But you're special. Merle was unsure whether this was a compliment or an insult. Regardless, he smiled and turned his body towards the relaxing boy. And what do I look like to you? The boy lowered his sunglasses and looked straight at Merle. He examined Merle and lingered on the golden retriever, who also spied the ostentatious surveyor. Someone that likes dogs, he said before he perked up in his chair. Aiden Oliver. You a first year? Merle hesitated, but decided to not get on anyone's bad side early. He grabbed Aiden's hand and gave it a tense shake. Aiden squeezed harder than necessary, with a shit-eating grin baring his pearly teeth. Yeah, Merle let go first. Yeah, I'm in Mr. Deku's class. Got in on recommendation. Aiden grabbed his red plastic cup by his feet and drew it to his lips. He drew a swig, which Merle shivered at Sue to the thick aroma of alcohol that broke open his sinuses like a crumbling dam. Recommendation, Aiden pursed his lips. Like for what? Well, I did something hero-like, I guess, Merle said as he pointed to his dog. Me and Sam here. And the governor for Texas thought it was worth recommending me to this new school. Said I should be taught by the best. Look at the heroic motherfucker we got here. Aiden clapped his hand on Merle's shoulder. You're a hustler, aren't you? Already saving people and all that. That's what we're here for, ain't it? Merle asked. Maybe. Aiden turned back to the platform at the bottom of the room. His eyes latched onto a student by the lower rows and raised his eyebrows in amusement. Maybe it's also scope out the competition, like that girl down there. Merle spotted a girl with thick baby pink hair, donning a tight pink turtleneck sweater. She drummed her fingers on the marble and hummed the day away as a serious-looking boy took a seat next to her. I mean, that's a killer rack on that girl, ain't it? Aiden asked. I won't be paying attention in class if she's there. Sounds like a you problem, Merle said. It's gonna be both our problems, Aiden said. You're telling me you wouldn't be distracted. I reckon a hero can't get distracted over things like that, Merle said. Aiden laughed when he saw the boy next to her. Riley just took out his brick of a phone and pulled up the antenna on the top. Bro, look. That one kid just pulled out his phone. That's like an ancient artifact or something. He broke into a museum coming here, didn't he? Some people can't afford those smartphones, Merle said. That brick is so old. He could probably call up the 90s or something, Aiden said. He took a flyer for the school from his pocket and balled it up. Then he chucked it. The paper spun through the air, over the heads of students, all the way down the pathway right into the back of Riley's head. He, however, never felt it as a hand snagged the ball of paper right by his skull. The pink-haired girl, with a strange cowlick hanging from her hair that twitched like a car antenna, placed the paper ball in front of Riley. I apologize, she said to the befuddled boy. It appears a message was sent your way via paper ball. Riley took the paper and brushed it to the side of his stack of papers he grabbed from one of the school staffers. Thanks, I guess. She smiled with a warm, even motherly expression and nodded at the gigantic cellular device Riley had. Haven't seen one of those in a while. Riley swallowed and let out a deep breath. He had to remember that he was undercover. He knew blending in was going to be tough, so the less words he said to people, the better. This girl seemed friendly enough, and based on the tag clipped to her very generous chest, she was named Mai and was also in his class. I like retro tech. Riley said. Less complicated. Agreed. If only children today stayed off all of those awful websites. I even heard of this one social media site where people have made up names and post on this thing. And they post awful photos and moving loops of video on this hellacious site. Riley opened up his notebook and clicked a fountain pen he pulled from his cargo pants. A horrible site, like on the internet. Yes, it's called Discord. Riley wrote down the name. This Discord site sounded horrifying, and he was sure that only the most wretched groups would congregate on the site. It sounded like these people would instant message each other distasteful opinions, and possibly even illicit materials. He had to investigate and report his findings once he logged into the site. Mai smacked her lips and clasped her hands together. I'm so mannerless. My name is Mai Karanashi. And you are? Riley set down his pen. He supposed he could at least relay his name. I'm Riley. Oh, that's a lovely name, Mai said. I suppose, Riley said in a gruff tone. He took out a small cartridge with an old tape in the central console. Then, he untangled the headset and plugged in the cable. Oh, is that an old music device? Mai asked. One of those walker thingies, right? Walkman, Riley said. So, do you think, when we are in Professor Deku's class, we will? The snap of the Walkman's buttons started the tape. A velvet hiss popped over the headphones with the quiet guitar chords played a melancholy song. Mai babbled unknowing with Riley closing his eyes and focusing on the lyrics of the female singer crooning in his ear. A lonely, meditative song caused his shoulders to roll back in relaxation. He thought back to his family and all the people counting on him to accomplish this mission. However, he nodded off to the song, knowing that he was adept and trained for this moment. One thing that he was concerned with was his quirk. He opened his eyes and looked at his forearm. A small, dull throb emanated from the impact of the injection. He wondered why his quirk didn't work for the paper ball about to hit him. He thought it was supposed to be infallible. Maybe he just had to learn how to use it like everybody else. When he could connect back to the home network, he could ask for advice or even an update to the software running through his veins. Before he could doze off further, his head was smacked by a duffel bag. Riley's forehead slammed into the table, and his headphones fell from his ears. They dangled inches above the ground, still connected to the music device. Excuse you, Riley grumbled out. A pale, petite girl wearing a black baseball cap and already wearing what appeared to be the school uniform ignored him. Instead, she stomped down the steps and slid her way into the row in front of Riley. She plopped onto the seat at the end of the row and narrowed her eyes at the room. Something is strange here, she said to herself. Her pink eyes examined the room. Mostly, there were reporters and strange students talking the day away. However, this girl knew she felt a presence in this building. A strange, unknown, and even supernatural presence that was calling out to her. Something that did not quite belong in this realm. She brushed away a strand of her long, raven black hair and spied on all the students in her vicinity. All of them were odd, but mostly due to their quirks. There was a boy with tentacles for hair, and one of them was actually making eye contact with her. Suspicious, maybe, but not out of place. She saw a trio in the row just in front of her. A golden light emanated from the halo of what appeared to be a literal angel. Well, if others can see him, likely he didn't just fly in from heaven. The other two appeared normal and boring. Then, she scoped from the corner of her eye a boy with a hardened jawline and stern eyes pointed at her. She spun around and pointed at him. You. Riley crooked his head up to look down at her. What? Where are you from? Huh. Didn't you hear me? Where are you from? The girl asked in a fast manner. Texas. Okay. She lowered her voice in a commanding, even powerful tone. When are you from? Riley's breath hitched. He bit his lip and forced himself to play this situation cool. There's no way she could actually know anything right now. She had no proof of anything. "Where do you think?" Riley asked. "I'm from here." She held up her fingers to her eyes, then jabbed them in the air towards his. "I'm watching you." The girl known as Siggy Cossack opened up her own notebook. She flipped to a new page and scribbled with a pencil on the surface. "Strange boy. Suspicious. Possibly demon sent from hell." As she furiously wrote down her thoughts, Siggy accidentally flicked her pen forward. It clipped over the taller man before her and fell into the row between him and the front area surrounded by reporters. Then, it bounced over the concrete before rolling down each step onto the surface level. At the bottom of the circular auditorium, a reporter kicked the pencil by accident and sent it flying off his shoe across the room. It sailed through the air all the way to the opposite side where there was a doorway. Between rows of students, the door was open. The pencil clacked off the floor and bounced inside the doorway. Now in the back hallway of the auditorium, the pencil rolled to a halt right around the corner. It hit the bottom soles of a familiar pair of red shoes, old and scuffed, that stood firm but shaking slightly due to nerves. He stood in his old hero uniform. The teal-green fabric still fit snug to his chest with his muscles, leaving more space than normal in the arm area. He knew he was not as strong as the past, but he had still kept up his training to make up for now longer being able to use one for all. His eyes quivered when he took a peek around the corner out the door. Throngs of news personnel and new students from the old school, and the new one about to open waited in anticipation. He had taken down some of the most dastardly villains in the world. Yet, as Izuku, but his fingernails and shifted around in his spot. He was as nervous as a little boy in the first day of kindergarten. "You ready?" Izuku leaped about a foot into the air. He fell onto the wall and froze at the sight of Hawks in a business suit. His ruby wings flowed from his back, while black fuzz scuffed his chin. "I guess not," Hawk said. "No, it's not that," Izuku said. He gazed down at his shoes and scrunched his toes inside the rubber. "It's just, I've only had that other class. And those were unique circumstances. They're really like my family. And I don't want to see this as like replacing them." Hawks smiled and leaned onto the wall next to Izuku. "You know, I remember you saying something similar when you graduated from UA. How when you entered your hero agency, you didn't want to forget your classmates. Listen, just 'cause you don't talk every day to them anymore, doesn't mean they don't care about you or vice versa. There's a special bond that never goes away when you spend this kind of time with people. Maybe you won't love everyone, and they may not love you back. But you learn from each person you come across. And if you can take away some new lesson or idea, then it ain't that bad." Izuku flexed his hand into a fist. Then, he released it. "I haven't really thought much about it, but since I lost my quirk, I see my students and how they've taken over. All of them fighting in America. Megan and Anton at the Syndicate. Lloyd protecting the Vatican. Moxie's gonna be #1 by next year. Even in Japan. Drake just opened up that caramel factory with the earnings from your agency. And Katsu even took down that scissor villain all by himself." "Okay, but that villain was quite dumb," Hawk said. "A barber with a scissors and straight razors for appendages." "Yes, but you know how Katsu is around shape objects," Izuku said. "Before he graduated, he put bubble wrap on all his utensils and ate with them. So he would cut a steak with a knife covered in bubble wrap." "What?" "But now look at him," Izuku said, "and all the others that have come up since. And, I don't know. It just feels like, even with one for all." Izuku took a step to the doorway. He saw the excited faces of the students as they caught a glimpse of him. A few pointed, and then the sound of roaring approval rippled through the room until the auditorium became a tsunami of applause. Cameras flashed with the portal to the room becoming white and obscuring Izuku's vision with lilac spots dotting his gaze. Maybe I was never that special after all. Izuku walked out. Hawks, with a sad sigh. perked up and plastered a brave face. He strolled out behind Izuku into the barrage of noise. And barrage it was. The entire crowd stood and cheered for Izuku. He stretched a thin smile on his face and waved at everyone. Hawks was much more animated, blowing a kiss or two to his adoring fans. A few students even fell back into their chairs as they approached the central stage of the auditorium. They climbed up a step onto the surface with Izuku sitting by a few teachers who had been waiting at the stage. Hawks strode to the podium and waited for the applause to die down. One face that did stand out was the odd kid with a strange golden glow protruding out of his back. It was almost like an LED projection of wings instead of actual wings like his. However, he cleared his throat and tapped on the microphone to stop any further thoughts wandering about in regards to the new students. "Thank you all so much for joining us today," Hawks said. "I am glad that you all could witness the opening of our new school." Now, previously, this island was known as Detroit Hero Prep, and it was not the most prestigious institution. So, we have revamped it in the best way. A new staff, new building, new students. A few of the students applauded themselves. And some local students as well, Hawks said. A few jeers rang out from the crowd. Lynn clapped, but then stopped when she saw some of the local students heckling Hawks. "Go back to Japan. We don't need y'all here. Not good enough to be a hero no more, huh?" Hawks frowned at the surprise insults. This was certainly unexpected. He flashed a quick look to Izuku, whose eyes widened at the unexpected intrusions. Instead of responding, Hawks straightened the red tie on his neck and bristled his wings to silence the remaining hecklers. "So, all the students will receive instructions on the structure of this school in their homerooms. In fact, you will spend most of your time with your homeroom teacher. They are all well-rounded heroes who are experts in every subject they will teach you. After this orientation, you will go to your assigned homeroom, where your professor will have a different array of methods to determine what route you should take in this school and how to best hone your skill." "Excuse me, are you eating pizza?" Hawks pointed at the top of the auditorium. Around one of the upper rows, Aiden munched on a slice with a tomato sauce on top of the cheese with his feet on the table. Merle hid his face in his hand, while Sam sniffed the air by the pizza. "Yeah, still hungry from the rager last night," Aiden said. "You want some?" "You're asking me if I want some pizza?" "Yeah, it's Detroit style," Aiden said. "No, I don't want your pizza," Hawk said. "But please stop eating. I need it for my blood sugar." "Dog," Aiden said with his mouth full of cheese and pepperoni. "I don't care," Hawk said. "Put the pizza down." "Excuse me," Melanie by the front row raised her hand. "But it's extremely important for a person with low blood sugar to intake 20 milligrams of carbohydrates every 15 minutes. So I believe that student has a point." "Okay, I don't need a nurse to tell me about blood sugar," Hawk said. "And this isn't a queue and a session. Please wait till after for comments." "Hey, not all disabilities are visible, you know." Lynn raised her hand and spoke anyway. "He could actually need it." "Yeah, like I knew this one guy," Skylar chimed in. "And he was famous. I won't name names, but it was a guy named Timothy, but he has 2 E's at the end of the name. And he had trouble with his blood sugar. So when we were on stage for the revival of Cats, which by the way I was in the ensemble, we actually paused the scene we were in so he could drink milk, but for real cause he needed it." "Okay, the pizza is distracting," Hawk said. "I just want him to eat a little later." "But what if he dies before then?" Skylar shouted. "Oh my gosh. What if he dies and it's like in the same room as me? That's what my horoscope said would happen to me yesterday." "Horoscope," Siggy sneered to Skylar. "You still use horoscopes? If you really want to get in tune with spirits, you need a great spectrometer device. That'll tell you whose spirit is about to leave whose body." "I don't care," Hawk shouted. "No pizza while I'm speaking." "Wait a second. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Hawks, are you denying an accommodation for a disability? What? No, Hawks said. And stop raising your hands. I'm not answering questions. This school isn't ADA compliant, another reporter said. Then, he turned to his camera. This just in. USA's, the new school in Detroit, is denying children access to necessary therapies for their ailments. Therapies? Hawks screamed. Pizza is not therapy. Soon, the entire auditorium was a sea of calamity. Students argued with each other over the merit of a student eating pizza to survive. Reporters spilled gossip like waterfalls into a desert through their cameras. Even some parents shook their heads and tugged at some of their offspring's shoulders, telling them that perhaps this school isn't the right one for them. Hawks was used to the calm, pensive crowds in Japan. He had never dealt with the raucous and calamitous atmosphere that made up debating and arguing folks America. He knew these people liked to talk a lot, but to carry on in a spirited argument over pizza and health was not something he anticipated. Izuku, however, had enough. He grit his teeth as he saw the crowds continue to shout at each other. Meanwhile, Aiden are the day away with Merle pulling the brim of his cowboy hat down. Izuku spotted this and realized that, despite how annoying some of these students could already be, some of them wanted to be taught, and by him as well. He still had a purpose for being Wei, and that was to make the next generation of heroes ready to take on the world. And perhaps Izuku himself could save the world again. One last time. Izuku shot to his feet. He stormed over to the podium and placed a hand on Hawk's shoulder. He shunted him out of the way and gripped the microphone like a bullhorn. He lassoed in a deep breath, just as the arguing and reporting reached a mind-numbing apex that bounced around the auditorium. Louder, louder, almost unbearable. Then, all of you, shut up, Deku screamed calmly. Silence froze the room. All eyes locked onto Izuku. He seethed through his teeth and slammed a fist down on the wooden podium. A small crack etched into the surface and ran down all the way to the floor. I'm not playing around anymore, Izuku yelled. This school is not going to be what it once was. I know some of you are still here from the last school year, when this place was run down, and there were cages in the cafeteria. Metal detectors at every entrance. This school has the lowest grades and lowest attendance, as well as the most arrests of any school in America. And don't think for a second that I'm fooled by all the marble or gold. I can see troublemakers a mile away, and I know some of you students were in detention or suspended on a daily basis. Well, I say no more. There will be order in this school, or you will be expelled expeditiously. Izuku held up a small baggie at the podium. You see this? This is spice, a quirk-enhancing drug we just confiscated off a student today. I personally threw that student out of this school, and I will do the same to all of you. There will be no drug use, and this school is going to be run like an institution for learning, not a zoo. For too long, the people of this city have had to watch this building fall into a cesspool of bullshit. But it won't happen while I'm here. I am going to teach my class, but I'm also going to teach all of you. Yes, even you. All the reporters that just suck at people's misfortune like ticks. That's all you people are. Blood-sucking ticks. The reporters lowered their microphones. Izuku swallowed and shouted again to the point that spit was flying out of his mouth. I've taken on villains that would make you run away and cry home to mommy. But guess what? I did it anyway. And if I can do, then you can too. And you're all going to learn that whether you like it or not. I'm going to fix this school and all the people inside it. And we will be the best school in the entire country. Maybe even the entire world. You know why? Because King Kong ain't got shit on me. His final words seemed to echo across the room, and through the window out to the bay shining beyond the waterfront of Detroit. A pin dropping would be the volume of a full orchestra exploding into Mahler. Not a single person dared take in oxygen or exhale. Every person remained still statues with their eyes as giant dinner plates staring in shock and awe at the outburst. Hawks, for once, was lost for words. He could only lower his head and hope that people did not either run away in terror or try to sue them for distressing their children before the school year had technically started. The entire student body glanced at one another, but none of them moved a muscle. Not until a snore. Ayumu broke the reverie by lifting her head up and rubbing her eyes. She blinked her soft, baby blue eyes and yawned. She smacked her lips and looked out at the crowd. "Did I," she demurred, "miss something?" Izuku blinked in confusion. Then, a small chuckle. It came from Riley, who had to cover his mouth to stifle away the laugh before it escaped. Then, another gag of a laugh. This time from Leon, who had to hug himself to try and push away the giggle. Finally, right where it all started by Aiden, Sam wagged his tail and lifted up his nose to make an announcement to the student body. Bark. The dam of silence gave way to a torrent of laughter that drowned Izuku. The whole room laughed, and he was sure that people at home watching were chortling in amusement as well. Even the reporters from various serious news agencies could not help but join in on the merriment. In fact, a few of them were doubled over with laughter and dropped their microphones while pointing at Izuku. Skylar pulled out his phone and made a quick reel for one of his social media accounts. He filmed the area around him laughing and zoomed in on Izuku. His face may have been the most humorous thing. His mouth was wider than one of the Great Lakes, and his green eyes had a faraway look like a memory of a similar event was playing within them. He then turned the phone towards his neighbor. Leon laughed, and then caught a glimpse of Skylar recording. However, Leon paid no mind and continued to laugh with his bright smile shining right into Skylar's phone camera. After a few moments, he calmed down and glanced back at Izuku. "Wow," Skylar smiled when he set his phone down. "Even his laugh is really cute." Skylar admired Leon giggling the day away in the sea of jocular students who clapped and keeled over from their expressions of hilarious joy. Even Merle, who had been previously embarrassed, ruffled Sam's hide and chuckled a bit. Down on stage, Izuku was still in shock. He was unsure as to whether this was a good thing or his worst nightmare. Flashbacks of when he last tried to be serious with his class rang through his brain. Perhaps being the bad cop was just not in his wheelhouse. Then, Hawks gave Izuku an assuring clap on the shoulder. Izuku turned to find a beaming Hawks with his wings now relaxed. "Good job, Deku," he said. "Exactly as planned." Izuku blinked. A plethora of words, both benign and censor-worthy, tunneled through his brain. However, as eloquent as Izuku considered himself, he could only muster one response. "Huh?" Back in the seats, Ayumu saw there was no further need to pay attention. She slammed her head back down and went back to sleep. After all, she would need all the energy she could get for her first day of school.